Chapter 41, General Notices. Plus 50. Meat leg. Plus 80. Meat leg. Plus 110. Meat leg. Nima. It can actually eat meat to regain blood. Zhangze directly cursed. It was hard enough to deal with in itself, but it could actually regain blood on its own. This was too rogue. Lu Yueying ran to the bell tower. I can't. I slide down when I climb. I can't climb this clock tower. Lu Yueying watched as Death Butcher's blood was returning little by little with an anxious face. Heaven-swallowing frog and stone-throwing goblin, bring him down. Zhangze gave the order while also drawing his bow and arrows to attack towards the Death Butcher, and as a result, Zhangze and the stone-throwing goblin's attacks couldn't even reach the clock tower except for the sky-swallowing frog's fireballs that were able to fly to the clock tower. Boom. Minus 277. Swallow the frog. Death Butcher was having a good time eating when he was coldly hit by the fireball and the meat leg fell from his hand. Asshole. Bastard. The Death Butcher, who had been interrupted from eating, stormed out, and he immediately jumped down from the bell tower and rushed towards the heaven-swallowing frog. Great. He's coming down. Lu Yueying had a joyful look on her face, and Zhangze immediately controlled the poison spider to trap the Death Butcher, continuing his previous rogue play style. 17. Rakshasa. 49. Stone-throwing kobolds. Minus 210. Goblin King. Minus 199. Moon Shadow Ryu. Minus 297. Swallow the frog. Everyone, try harder. This guy is about to hang. Zhangze gritted his teeth and desperately shot with his bow. As soon as the cooldown time of Lu Yueying's light slash arrived, she immediately was releasing it. She really hoped that her skills didn't have a cooldown time and she could use them all the time. The Death Butcher also knew that he had reached the end of the road, and attacked even more frantically, and in the end, the Goblin King also died heroically. Thus, the sky-swallowing frog became his next target. However, under Zhangze's control, the poison spider effectively controlled the scene, preventing the Death Butcher from getting close to the heaven-swallowing frog. Finally, after some grueling battles, the Death Butcher's blood level dropped to the last ounce. Zhangze pulled back his bow and shot an arrow over. Go to hell. Minus 22. Rakshasa. Blast. I am not willing to do this. Death Butcher's blood was emptied by Zhangze's last arrow, and his body staggered before he finally collapsed to the ground with a loud bang, a violent tremor that nearly shook everyone down. Congratulations on killing the Death Butcher. A prompt appeared in front of Zhangze's eyes, and he was delighted. Great, with the addition of this powerful boss, my team will be even stronger. The next moment, another system prompt appeared. Notice to all, the deadly domain boss Death Butcher has been killed by Rakshasa. Congratulations to him. Notice to all, the deadly domain boss Death Butcher has been killed by Rakshasa. Congratulations to him. Notice to all, the deadly domain boss Death Butcher has been killed by Rakshasa. Congratulations to him. This tip appeared 3 times. Zhangze smiled bitterly in his heart. He had wanted to keep a low profile, but this seemed impossible. All the people saw it, and it was hard for him not to want to be famous. Lu Yueying gasped and looked at the corpse of the Death Butcher with some difficulty believing it. The boss is dead? We really killed the Death Domain boss? Zhangze laughed. That's still a lie. Look, the corpses are bursting with stuff. Only to see a large pile of items popping out of the Death Butcher's corpse, shining brightly and spreading all over the floor. Zhangze immediately collected everything. He took a look and said in surprise, haha. Exploded an S-ranked weapon. After saying that, he sent a screenshot of the equipment to Lu Yueying to see. Bloodbath Longbow. Quality, S. Damage, 410 to 650. Special effect, when an attack deals damage to a target, convert 10% of the damage to your own blood. Durability, 300/300. Wow. This weapon has a blood-sucking special effect. Lu Yuing covered her small mouth in surprise. It was the first time she had seen a weapon with this kind of special effect. It wasn't that she hadn't seen S-rank weapons before, her sixth uncle was carrying one, but it was a shoulder guard with a special effect that reduced long-range damage by 10%, but when compared to this, bloodshed longbow, it was far worse. This weapon is just right for you to use, keep it. Lu Yuing said to Zhang Zhe without hesitation. After all, the one who got the most credit for this bitter battle was Zhang Zhe, and although she also contributed her efforts, she was not the first to be rewarded. Then I'll be polite. Zhang Zhe did not make any pretense and directly took down his trash longbow and replaced it with this bloodshed longbow. Instantly, a black longbow with a red glow around it appeared in his hand, and Zhang Zhe could even sense an aura of extreme thirst for blood from its body. This bow is so strong. Zhang Zhe's face was jubilant. You're so lucky. Lu Yuing's eyes were also filled with envy. Many people might not be able to get a piece of S-rank equipment after hanging out in the magic realm for a few years or even a dozen years, whereas Zhang Zhe had gotten one in just a few days, and it was also a weapon with excellent special effects. His luck was really not that good. Hey. How are you two doing? My illusion time is almost over. At that moment, Midsummer Night's Dream called out from the distance. He couldn't move while controlling the illusion, so he couldn't see what was behind him at all. We're victorious. The boss is dead. Zhang Zhe shouted, then turned his head to Lu Yuing and said, I've collected a total of 16 attribute-less high-ranked demon soul orbs, as well as a random scroll and 4 bottles of strong recovery medicinal wine. I'll keep the random scroll, and I'll share half of the rest with you. Lu Yuing wanted to refuse, but Zhang Zhe had already sent something to her mailbox, so after thinking about it, she accepted it as well. These things were really useful to her as well, as she was going to hit the second-order Demon Realm powerhouse test. Oops. Those foreign adventurers are coming this way. As Midsummer Night's Dream stumbled back and fled, Zhang Zhe and Lu Yuing instantly glanced at each other. It must have been the all-magic realm hint just now that made them realize that they had been cheated. Damn. So that Death Butcher just now was an illusion. Dr. Legend rushed over from the distance with Harrison and the Elves of the Night in a furious rage, and he saw Zhang Zhe at a glance, and he was even more furious inside. You damned Daxian, you robbed our boss. Dr. Legend gritted his teeth. The reward and honor for killing the boss should have belonged to us. The Elf of the Night said coldly, Don't them nonsense, just kill them and snatch the things? That's right. Harrison raised his giant axe, licked his lips, and said sorrowfully. Zhang Zhe looked at the minions around him. Only one stone-throwing goblin, a poison spider and sky-swallowing frog remained, and there was still a Death Butcher in his summoning space that hadn't come out. Lu Yuing was urgently replenishing her blood. The bitter battle just now had caused her blood level to drop below the danger line. I'm afraid that it would take at least a minute to regain full blood. Midsummer Night's Dream hid behind Zhang Zhe, his face pale. This guy basically couldn't fight. Chapter 42, you two keep in touch more often. Although I can summon the Death Butcher out to fight them, the risk is too great. Zhang Zhe frowned. The safest way now is to leave the dead domain immediately. You two exit the death domain. Lu Yuing suddenly spoke up, her eyes flashed with hatred as she said, My sixth uncle died at their hands, I must take revenge. A Midsummer Night's Dream was startled and said busily, Sister Moon Shadow, are you crazy? You can't beat the 3 of them alone. Zhang Zhe also frowned and said, Don't be impulsive, or else your sixth uncle will have died in vain. Lu Yuing, however, shook her head and said with a firm face, I swore an oath. We'll never be able to let my loved ones die again. These guys, I must kill them today, to avenge my sixth uncle. This Lu Yuing is also too stubborn. Zhang Zhe's brows locked tighter. What should we do? Should we really leave her alone? I don't care, I don't want to die. I want to go back. Midsummer Night's Dream shouted before exiting the deadly domain. Lu Yuing looked at Zhang Zhe, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. Zhang Zhe sighed helplessly and summoned the Death Butcher. while drawing his longbow towards Dr. Legend and the others on the opposite side. Lu Yueying froze and said in surprise, "What are you doing? Get out of here, this is a personal grudge between me and them." "It has nothing to do with you." "It's true that your personal grudge has nothing to do with me, however, you're also my compatriot, I can't watch you get killed by foreigners." Zhang Zhe quietly looked at Lu Yueying and said, "I'll leave if you leave, and I'll stay if you stay." "You." Lu Yueying's face turned slightly red as she let out a low grunt and said, "This is something you volunteered for, I don't owe you a favor." "Got it, I volunteered." Zhang Zhe smiled faintly and aimed at the approaching Dr. Legend. Across the room, Dr. Legend and the other three looked shocked. "What the hell? The Death Butcher has refreshed again. I've never heard of a deadly domain boss being refreshed after it dies. Could it be that my eyes are blurred?" "You didn't blink, another Death Butcher did appear, but why didn't this Death Butcher attack those two Dasha people? Instead, it stood stupidly behind that Rakshasa?" The three men were dumbfounded, completely confused as to what was going on. Right at this moment, Lu Yueying suddenly received a message that surprisingly came from Raging Wind Pursuit. "Raging Wind Chase, Moon Shadow, I'm not dead, you and Rakshasa, get out of the Death Domain. Don't die with those three foreigners." Lu Yueying was pleasantly surprised and was busy writing back, "Sixth uncle? Is it really you? You're not dead? Raging Wind Chase, you want Uncle Six me to die so badly? Cut the crap and come out, Xiao Tian already told me what just happened, you two did a great job." "Fine." Lu Yueying wiped her tears and said to Zhang Zhe next to her, "Rakshasa, let's go. My sixth uncle is still alive." "Really? Great." Zhang Zhe also let out a sigh of relief, he had actually pinched a sweat just now, after all. He actually had no bottom at all in his heart when he fought against three high-level adventurers, but he couldn't be a big man and leave a fellow little girl down for a foreigner to kill. Zhang Zhe retrieved the Death Butcher and the two of them immediately exited the deadly domain, while the three Dr. Legends on the opposite side were once again in a state of confusion. "Hey! How come the Death Butcher is gone again? Brush!" Zhang Zhe and Lu Yueying appeared on the altar of the fourth floor at the same time, and Fury Slayer, Wind Chaser and Midsummer Night's Dream were anxiously waiting for them, and when they saw them appear, they immediately greeted them. "Rakshasa, Moon Shadow, you two are good." Rage-killing Wind Chaser laughed out loud, both hands patting Zhang Zhe and Lu Yueying's shoulders. He looked at Zhang Zhe approvingly and said, "When I looked at you for the first time, I thought you were different, I was right." "I'm flattered." Zhang Zhe smiled modestly. Raging Kill Wind Chaser glanced at Midsummer Night's Dream on the side in dissatisfaction and said angrily, "Look at Rakshasa, and then look at you. No talent." Midsummer Night's Dream lowered his head in shame, he had just left Lu Yueying behind to escape alone, and as soon as he came out, he met angry Killing Wind Chaser and was reprimanded in public. "Brother Rakshasa, our Lu family is also considered a prestigious family, are you interested in joining? I will highly recommend you with the family head and let you enjoy the treatment of a senior staff member." Raging Kill Wind Chaser looked at Zhang Zhe with a face full of expectation. Zhang Zhe shook his head, "Thank you for your kind words, but I don't want to join any organization yet." "Well, that's fine too. I won't force myself." Angry Kill Wind Chaser laughed and said, "That, you and my family's Moon Shadow are the same age, so the two of you usually get in touch more often." Haha. Raging Kill Wind Chaser was very optimistic about Rakshasa, especially just now when he accompanied Lu Yueying to stay despite the personal danger. This courage made him very appreciative, so his old problem was back, hoping to set up Lu Yueying and Zhang Zhe to become a couple, which could also be considered as an explanation to Lu Yueying's dead parents. "Sixth uncle." Lu Yueying's face instantly turned red as she shouted with an angry face. Zhang Zhe also smiled and said, "I see." After thinking for a moment, he opened his mouth and asked, "There's still one more thing I would like to ask for advice." "Feel free to open your mouth." Raging Kill Wind Chaser was in a great mood, although he was sneak attacked by Dr. Legends trio and fled, but he was very, very happy that he didn't die in a big way, in addition to the fact that the deadly realm boss was killed by Rakshasa and Lu Yaya, and that the rewards and honors didn't fall into the hands of the foreigners. It's like this, if I'm going to fight against a first-order demon realm powerhouse, what do I need to pay attention to? Zhang Zhe asked in a deep voice. He hadn't forgotten that there was a wanted man waiting for him in the real world outside. You're taking on a first-order demon realm powerhouse? Upon hearing Zhang Zhe's words, angry Slayer Wind Chaser froze, then locked his brows and said in a deep voice, Brother Rakshasa, have you encountered any trouble? No need to be polite, just talk to me. I can help you set things right. The Lu family, where Raging Kill Wind Chaser was located, although not the top-level family in the Great Summer Country, it could still be ranked in the top 100, and its strength was naturally not to be underestimated as long as Zhang Zhe did not provoke too powerful an opponent. Raging Kill Wind Chaser was confident that he could help Zhang Zhe eliminate this disaster. After all, there is also communication between the great families of the Great Summer Country, unless it is a deep hatred, otherwise it is still quite amicable, and they will give a few thin faces to each other, and will not make things too stiff. Zhang Zhe smiled and said, Thank you for your kind words, but this is something I think I can solve on my own. The most difficult debt in the world is the debt of favors. Zhang Zhe now has 8 attribute-less high-grade magic soul balls in his hand. Zhang Zhe is confident that after absorbing these high-grade magic soul balls, his strength will be raised by a large margin, although he does not dare to say that he can defeat that Huang Hanfei, but self-protection should be no problem. Therefore, he didn't want to owe a favor to Angry Kill Wind Chaser. Chapter 43 Zhang Zhe's Advantage. Lu Yuan opened her mouth next to her as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she didn't speak. A Midsummer Night's Dream quietly said to Zhang Zhe, Brother Rakshasa, the demon realm powerhouses are even more powerful than we imagined, so don't be blindly arrogant, and be careful of giving away your life. Angry Kill Wind Chaser moved to hit Zhong Xia Knight and scolded, Shut your crow's mouth. Brother Rakshasa surely has his own plans, and since he is confident that he can handle it, we don't need to say anything more. After thinking about it, Raging Kill Chasing Wind said to Zhang Zhe, If you want to deal with a demon realm powerhouse, apart from your own strength being strong enough, you also need to pay attention to what aspect of your opponent's strengths are. Advantage? Zhang Zhe raised his eyebrows, What do you mean? Raging Kill Wind Chaser explained, As we all know, in order to become a demon realm powerhouse you must pass an examination. In fact, the examination of a first-order demon realm powerhouse is very simple. As long as the four-dimensional attributes are up to standard basically all can pass. However, such demon realm powerhouses are actually quite common, as everyone is at about the same level, and even when they move, most of them are evenly matched. Therefore, many magic realm powerhouses started to target a certain attribute for strengthening. For example, by investing a lot of resources in the strength attribute, such a demon domain strongman's strength will be extremely powerful. His attacks are going to do more damage than other demon realm powerhouses. Then again, there are other demon realm powerhouses who would invest a lot of resources in their spirit, making his spiritual attribute value a whole lot higher than the other attributes, and naturally much more mentally powerful than other demon realm powerhouses. And such a demon realm powerhouse has an absolute advantage in battle. You can imagine, if you are fighting against a demon domain powerhouse, and the other party's spiritual power is a whole lot stronger than yours, while the other attributes are slightly lower than yours, but in a battle, the other party can use spiritual type attacks on you, and you have no power to fight at all. So, you need to understand what your opponent's strengths are. In response to his strengths, develop your battle plan. Listening to the words of Angry Kill Wind Chaser, Zhang Zhe nodded his head thoughtfully. He had roughly figured out that there were high and low strengths and weaknesses of demon realm powerhouses, and even for the same segment of demon realm powerhouses, there would be a gap due to the different values of the four-dimensional attributes associating himself again. Zhang Zhe looked at his attribute panel. Of my four-dimensional attributes, agility is the highest, having reached 15 points. Does this mean that my speed is a bit faster than others? Zhang Zhe clenched his chin and continued to think along with his thoughts. If I continue to invest more resources in the agility attribute, so that my movement speed and attack speed will be a whole lot faster than the others, then when it comes to fighting, I will have an advantage over them, and the better my chances of winning. I just don't know, what is the advantage of that Huang Hanfei? A Midsummer Night's Dream looked at the time and spoke. Sixth uncle, Sister Moon's shadow, my time to stay in the demon region is almost up, I'm going to quit early. Raging Kill Wind Chaser said, it's almost time for us to retreat together. After saying that, he looked at Zhang Zhe and said, Brother Rakshasa, I'll give you one more piece of advice before you leave, try not to mess with the demon realm powerhouses before you are strong enough. Thank you. Zhang Zhe thanked Raging Kill Chasing Wind, and then, Raging Kill Chasing Wind and Midsummer Night's Dream exited the magic realm together. Lu Yuan looked deeply at Zhang Zhe and threw a friend request over. Zhang Zhe froze for a moment and clicked agree, then Lu Yuan also went offline. Zhang Zhe took all the magic soul orbs he had on him and added all of them to agility in a brainwave. Now, his agility attribute had reached 26 points. This value was already very high. It was even a few points higher than an ordinary demon realm powerhouse. It's my turn. Zhang Zhe took a deep breath and adjusted himself before choosing to leave the magic domain. Under the bed, a flash of white light flashed, and Zhang Zhe appeared in place. He instantly burrowed out from under the bed, as fast as a bolt of lightning. He was worried that Huang Hanfei was guarding the side, and in order to prevent himself from being ambushed by the other party when he came out, so as soon as Zhang Zhe came back, he immediately fled from his position and prepared for battle. Huh? There's no one in the house? Where did that Huang Hanfei go? Zhang Zhe looked around suspiciously and realized that there was no one around. He carefully walked out of the bedroom, only to find that there was no one in the house at all. What's going on? That Huang Hanfei could not have left here. Zhang Zhe locked his brows as he looked toward the corner and found that the travel bag in the corner was still there, indicating that Huang Hanfei had not left. Where would he go? Could it be bad? Zhang Zhe's heart sank as he developed an extremely bad premonition, and in the next moment, he had rushed out of the room and ran towards his home. The room was unlocked. Zhang Zhe's heart went cold, and then he heard a person's voice coming from the room, and it was none other than that Huang Hanfei. Kid, I know you're out there, come on in. Let's have a nice talk. Zhang Zhe opened the door and walked into the house, and saw his sister, Zhang Feng, sitting on the sofa with a terrified look on her face, while that Huang Hanfei was sitting next to her, peeling an apple with a fruit knife in her hand, with a grim smile on her face. When I found the balcony door opened, I knew that someone from next door must have entered my home through the balcony, and it couldn't be anyone else but you, my good neighbor. Huang Hanfei peeled a piece of apple and stuffed it into his mouth, clicking and chewing. You release my sister first, and the two of us can talk about the rest. Zhang Zhe said in a deep voice. He had to let his sister out of danger first now, then he would consider how to deal with this Huang Hanfei. It's something I can't do, because she's already looked at me and knows that I'm a wanted man, and she'll definitely call the police once I release her. I can't take the risk. Huang Hanfei said slowly, I won't call the police. You let us off the hook. Please, uncle. Zhang Feng's tears were coming down. She was still a school student, not deeply involved in the world. Where had she experienced such a thing? She had long been scared out of her wits. Zhang Zhe took a deep breath and asked, then what do you want? Kill us both? Don't be so nervous. Huang Hanfei hemmed and hawed and said, as long as you two are obedient, I will not kill. But well, you two must follow me. As for your future fate, can only be in my hands. Huang Hanfei ate the apple one bite at a time. Zhang Feng was in his hands. He didn't worry about Zhang Zhe playing any tricks, and he had already thought of bringing these two to the black market to sell them. Chapter 44, Bounty Hunters. You know, this kind of young men and women on the black market has always been in demand, especially young girls, but also hot. Changing hands to sell a few 100,000 is not a problem. As for the boy, all the organs in his body could be removed and sold separately for a good amount of money. When that money is in hand, Huang Hanfei can flee to a foreign country where he can continue to live a life of ease. Zhang Zhe narrowed his eyes. He could roughly guess what this Huang Hanfei had in mind, but he didn't move and nodded his head. Yes, as long as you don't harm me and my sister. Don't worry, you two are very important assets to me. How could I possibly hurt you? Heh heh heh. Huang Hanfei licked his lips and revealed a greedy smile. Just then, there was a sudden knock on the door of the room. Huang Hanfei's brows furrowed and he whispered, "You called the police?" Zhang Zhe shook his head. "I didn't. Earlier, Zhang Zhe did send a message to his homeroom teacher, Mr. Lu Wei, but the signal didn't go out because of the bad signal, so the signal didn't go out. Could it be that the message was sent late and has now been sent to Mr. Lu Wei? Is it Mr. Lu Wei outside the door?" Zhang Zhe couldn't help but raise a glimmer of hope in his heart. If it was really Lu Wei who brought the police over, then he and his sister might still be saved today. Knock knock. There was another knock on the door of the room, and the person outside seemed to be in a hurry. Zhang Zhe looked at Huang Hanfei, who nodded at him. "Go open the door, don't play tricks." After saying that, Huang Hanfei sat on his butt beside Zhang Feng, the fruit knife pressed against Zhang Feng's waist. Zhang Zhe looked on and turned to open the door. "Hello. Your takeout order has arrived." Outside the door, a short little girl with a yellow takeout cap, smilingly holding a lunchbox, said to Zhang Zhe, "Enjoy your meal." "I didn't order takeout." "You delivered the wrong one." Zhang Zhe frowned and wanted to push that little girl out of the door. Who knows, that little girl even directly squeezed in, muttering with a dissatisfied face, "Guests can't be like this. Ordering takeout and not wanting it, isn't this playing with people?" Saying that, the little girl saw Huang Hanfei and Zhang Feng inside the house and yelled, "Did the two of them set it up?" Zhang Zhe pushed her out with some impatience and said angrily, "If I tell you there's no, go." That Huang Hanfei was a dangerous person, and Zhang Zhe didn't want to implicate anyone else, so he was in a hurry to get this little delivery girl out. What's more, he really didn't order takeout. "Humph. Guessed you are so excessive." The little girl grumbled under her breath and went downstairs. She came outside the building and threw the lunch box in her hand, taking off her hat to look upstairs, the corner of her mouth curled up slightly. "Sure enough, it's here. Hee, 1.5 million bounties in hand." Zhang Zhe heard footsteps traveling downstairs and turned to Huang Hanfei. "A delivery guy got the address wrong and has left." Huang Hanfei pulled Zhang Feng to his feet and said to Zhang Zhe, "Open the door, let's get out of here." "Where to?" Zhang Zhe subconsciously asked. Huang Hanfei didn't say anything, just pushed Zhang Feng as well as Zhang Zhe out of the room. The three of them came downstairs, and Huang Hanfei pointed to a dilapidated van across the street and said, "Get in the car, I'll take you away." Zhang Feng was scared and cried again. Zhang Zhe pulled his sister's hand tightly and whispered comfortingly, "Don't be afraid, brother will protect you." The three of them arrived in front of the van, and Huang Hanfei was about to open the door when suddenly, a white light shot towards his face. Huang Hanfei reacted quickly. He immediately tilted his head to dodge. The white light flew against his cheek, a stinging pain came. He reached out and touched it, realizing that his cheek had been cut, blood dripping down. "Who is it?" Huang Hanfei held Zhang Feng in his arms as the fruit knife was once again added to her neck, yelling at the direction where the white light flew, "Come out. Otherwise I'll kill her." Zhang Zhe was on the other side and wanted to strike but didn't dare. He was worried about hurting his sister. In the dark bushes, a petite figure walked out. Zhang Zhe's eyes suddenly became bigger. Wasn't this the little girl who delivered the takeaway just now? He actually missed. The little girl slowly walked to the light, revealing a pretty face. She raised her hands, and Zhang Zhe saw that on her 10 long and thin fingers, she had 10 darts with a cold light shining on them, spinning and spinning as her fingers wiggled. Huang Hanfei narrowed his eyes and said with a cold smile, "You are a bounty hunter, right? I had expected that there would be bounty hunters coming for me, but little girl, do you think you're a match for me?" The little girl shrugged her shoulders and said, "Uncle, you don't judge people by their appearance. Oh, although I'm young and small, but I'm a strong demon realm person. Oh, and my darts are very accurate." Before the words fell, the little girl shook her right hand and 5 darts shot towards Huang Hanfei. These 5 darts shot at different parts of Huang Hanfei's body, however, because Huang Hanfei held Zhang Feng in his arms, the darts would first hit Zhang Feng. Little girl. Aren't you afraid that the darts will hurt my hostage? Zhang Feng was acting as Huang Hanfei's shield, so he was emboldened and said with a sneer. As long as I kill you, I'll get the bounty, the deaths and lives of the others have nothing to do with me. The little girl grabbed her right hand in the air, and like a magic trick, 5 more darts appeared in her hand. As for the matter of accidentally injuring a hostage, the little girl was not worried at all that the police would find her. After all, it was a normal phenomenon for casualties to arise in the process of apprehending criminals, especially when the other party was still a demon realm powerhouse, and this was even more common. Sister. There was a flash of brilliance in Zhang Zai's eyes. His body instantly turned into a residual shadow and rushed in front of Zhang Feng in a flash, and in his eyes, the 5 darts of the little girl flew in front of him in slow motion as if he had pressed the slow play button. Snap. Zhang Zai moved his hands in quick succession, instantly catching 4 of the darts that were shot at Zhang Feng empty-handed. The remaining handful of darts, on the other hand, was flying directly at Huang Hanfei's forehead, so Zhang Zai didn't bother. Huh? What? Huang Hanfei and the little girl marveled in unison. This person, he's so fast. Actually, catching my darts with his empty hands. The little girl's face was shocked beyond belief, knowing that her dart speed was as high as 300 kilometers per second. Not to mention ordinary people, even magic realm powerhouses with low agility values simply couldn't dodge it. As for Zhang Zai, who had just taken the 4 darts afterward, with great speed and great precision, this level was definitely a step above that of an ordinary demon realm powerhouse. Could it be that he's a demon realm powerhouse? The little girl's eyes narrowed. Could he be in league with this Huang Hanfei? It shouldn't be. I've checked the police information. Huang Hanfei is alone, there are no accomplices. Chapter 45, Spiritual Hypnosis. On the other side, Huang Hanfei watched the white light fly towards his forehead, and he had to raise his hand and use his fruit knife to block it. Zhang Zai then took this opportunity to save his sister from Huang Hanfei's bad with one hand. Zhang Zai shielded his sister behind him, glaring angrily at the little girl and said, "You almost hurt my sister just now." The little girl grunted softly and said gently, "I didn't do it on purpose." Who let her get in the way of the prisoners herself? Hearing this little girl's words, Zhang Zai couldn't wait to rush up and give her 2 big slaps. Simply not taking human life seriously. The little girl turned her head and stopped paying attention to Zhang Zai's siblings. Instead, she focused all her attention on Huang Hanfei. This was a $1.5 million bounty. It was enough to cover his expenses for 3 months. He absolutely could not be allowed to run away. Huang Hanfei had no more hostages, but there was no look of panic on his face. Instead, he sighed softly and said, "I didn't want to go on a killing spree today, but it looks like it won't work. Then let's take you first." With that, Huang Hanfei rushed straight towards the little girl. In his mind, the superhuman speed that Zhang Zai had just displayed did surprise him, but he believed that the biggest threat to him right now was still that bounty hunter. So he decided to take care of this little girl first before turning back to clean up Zhang Zai's siblings. Just in time. The little girl jumped in place, leaping 4 or 5 meters into the air. Directly avoiding Huang Hanfei's attack, she then did a flip in the air, crossed her hands and shook them, 10 darts shooting towards Huang Hanfei. Huang Hanfei rolled away on the ground and managed to avoid it, but before he could stand still, the little girl shot 10 more darts at him, as fast as lightning. I don't know where she got those darts from, but in this short while, she shot out 40 to 50 of them, causing Zhang Zai and Zhang Feng to suspect that this little girl was a juggler. Huang Hanfei also did not expect the little girl actually with so many darts. He originally thought there are 20 or 30 on almost, but did not expect this little girl endless darts, so that he was overwhelmed. Pain. Damn it. Huang Hanfei cursed in his heart, looks like we have to use a trick. Thinking of this, he suddenly changed his tactics, no longer just dodging, but charging towards the little girl. finally resigned to your fate. Let me shoot your body into a bloody hole and take it straight for the bounty. Heh heh heh. The little girl naturally wouldn't fight Huang Hanfei in close combat, her two little short legs stomped, and her body dodged lightly as if behind her. Hey! Look at this. Suddenly, Huang Hanfei pulled something out of his pocket, waved it in front of the little girl's eyes, and bellowed. The little girl subconsciously looked towards that thing, and then both of her eyes went straight. Her body also involuntarily slowed down, as if she was mesmerized, and she could no longer take her eyes off that thing. What's going on? Why isn't that girl moving? Zhang Zhe was astonished and also looked at the object in Huang Hanfei's hand, which turned out to be a mirror. Huang Hanfei's eyes were locked onto the little girl, his eyes were covered in blood and his eyeballs were almost protruding out of their sockets, but he had a smile on the corner of his mouth as he heatedly said, "You're under my control now, throw away your darts and come to my side." His voice was slow and rhythmic, sounding in the little girl's ears with a supreme majesty that made her unable to resist doing what he said. Clanking and clanking, the little girl dropped all the darts in her hand and staggered to Huang Hanfei's face like a walking corpse. Ha ha ha. It seems like you've added all your attributes to agility and your mental power must be ridiculously low, otherwise you wouldn't be so easily controlled by my mental power. Huang Hanfei laughed triumphantly, then raised the fruit knife and was about to stab the little girl's large eyes. Suddenly, a stone violently hit over. Huang Hanfei sidestepped his body to avoid the stone, but he heard a sound of breaking glass coming from his heart. My mirror. That mirror had already been broken into pieces by the stone and was completely unusable, but instead, Huang Hanfei looked at Zhang Zhe with an annoyed face, and it was Zhang Zhe who had thrown this stone just now. Since you're so anxious to die, I'll finish you off first. With that, Huang Hanfei lunged over like Zhang Zhe. I'm going to utilize my speed advantage. Zhang Zhe's body moved as he thought this in his mind. Just at this instant, Zhang Zhe felt that everything around him started to slow down again. In fact, it was his speed that was too fast, relatively causing him to feel everything around him slowing down. And all of this turned into something else in Huang Hanfei's eyes as Zhang Zhe's body suddenly disappeared right before his eyes. Before he could return to his senses, he felt a gust of fist wind coming from the direction of his right side. His reaction was fast enough to immediately dodge, but the gust of wind came from the left again. Huang Hanfei was unable to dodge, and could only reach out to block, but that gust of wind changed again. Boo! Zhang Zhe punched Huang Hanfei in the stomach. And Huang Hanfei is now holding his hands up, blocking to the left. Zhang Zhe's strength value wasn't high, so the punch wasn't heavy, and the punch only made Huang Hanfei feel a pain in his stomach. After all, his physique attribute wasn't low. However, Zhang Zhe did not throw a single punch, but rather Zhang Zhe swung dozens of punches in this instant. Huang Hanfei only felt that his internal organs had been knocked out of position. When he came back to his senses, Zhang Zhe had already finished fighting and the man ran to dozens of meters away again, looking at him with a calm face. You kid. Wow. Huang Hanfei was just about to open his mouth to speak when a mouthful of blood spurted out. His internal organs had already been severely damaged by Zhang Zhe's beating just now, and now the injuries finally erupted, causing him to flop to his knees, his body convulsing, white foam gushing out of his mouth along with blood, and the man quickly became unconscious. Who? Zhang Zhe breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, he had won this battle by a fluke. After all, Huang Hanfei did not know that Zhang Zhe's advantage was in speed, so he did not guard against it. In addition, Huang Hanfei had just exerted his spiritual power on that little girl and had no extra power in use against Zhang Zhe, which was like Zhang Zhe taking advantage of the situation. Otherwise, it's really hard to say whether the winner will win or lose. Brother, how's the bad guy doing? Zhang Feng quietly poked his head out from behind a trash can and asked nervously. It's okay, come out. Zhang Zhe waved from his sister before picking up his cell phone to call his homeroom teacher, Lu Wei. Lu Wei was just about to go to bed when he received Zhang Zhe's call. He immediately got up from the bed and told Zhang Zhe while putting on his clothes, "You take control of the wanted man first, I'll bring someone over right away." Be careful. He then hung up and grabbed the door, while sending another message to the police to report the situation. Chapter 46 Shen Mengdai. Zhang Zhe found a rope and tied the already unconscious Huang Hanfei tightly, and after thinking about it, he squatted down to grope around Huang Hanfei's body some more. It's a charge card. Zhang Zhe's face was delighted. He checked, and Huang Hanfei actually had 6 spending cards on him, 3 bronze, 1 silver and 2 gold. In the country of Daxia, there are 4 types of consumer cards, which are bronze, silver, gold and diamond cards. The bronze spending card has a minimum reload denomination of $1,000 and is capped at 10,000. The silver spending card has a minimum reload of 10,000 and is capped at $100,000. The rechargeable denomination of the gold spending card starts at 100,000 and is capped at 1 million. And the diamond card, which has a denomination of 1 million, with no cap. In other words, Huang Hanfei only had 6 charge cards on him, and the amount totaled up to a minimum of more than $210,000. If they were all full, it would be a staggering 2,300,000 plus. This guy is really rich. It should all be gotten from his bad deeds. Zhang Zhe didn't even think about it. He directly put all the spending cards into his arms. Although these money might be stolen money, Zhang Zhe didn't plan to turn it in. He was going to take this money for his sister. If the police ask, they can play dumb. On the other side, that little bounty hunter girl was still standing dumbfounded, her eyes straight, as if she had been subjected to a fixation spell. Zhang Feng circled around the little girl and turned around to ask Zhang Zhe, "Brother, why isn't she moving at all?" Zhang Zhe walked to the little girl and shook his hand in front of her eyes. Seeing that she didn't respond, he guessed, it should be that she was hypnotized by this wanted criminal just now, and she hasn't returned to normal yet. What then? Should we help her? Zhang Feng looked at Zhang Zhe, and Zhang Zhe also looked at his sister, and then, the two of them simultaneously revealed a heartfelt smile. Do you have a pen, brother? Preferably one that doesn't wash out well? Has it? I'll get it for you. Afterward, Zhang Zhe fetched the marker and handed it to Zhang Feng, who took the pen and walked towards the little girl with a smile. 10 minutes later, several police cars wailed into Zhang Zhe's neighborhood with sirens blaring. The police car stopped, Lu Wei and a group of police stormed over. Seeing Zhang Zhe's siblings unharmed, the wanted man is still in a coma, did not wake up. A group of people counted a sigh of relief. Zhang Zhe, your kid has too much guts. Didn't they say inside the group not to have any contact with criminals? This guy is very dangerous. He already has 7 lives on his back. The first thing Lu Wei said when he saw Zhang Zhe was all kinds of criticism. He was a responsible teacher and didn't want to see his students suffer any harm. An old police officer next to him laughed. Teacher Lu Wei, don't criticize him. He is now our Tianfeng City's great hero and great hero. We have been catching this wanted criminal for 2 whole years. All of them were cunningly escaped by him, and now he has finally been caught by your student. You have to be proud of yourself and proud of yourself. Lu Wei let out a sigh of relief. His taut expression then revealed a hint of a smile as he said, of course I'm proud, but I'm just worried that their siblings are in danger. But then again, how did you knock this guy down? This is a first-order demon realm powerhouse, and you didn't even graduate from high school. Zhang Zhe blinked and said, of course I can't do it by myself. That little girl over there also helped me a lot. I forgot to tell you guys, this little girl seems to have been hit by Huang Hanfei's hypnosis, and now she's not moving at all. Lu Wei and the others looked over toward the little girl, and the old officer raised his eyebrows and said, so it's her, no wonder. Curious, Zhang Zhe asked, who exactly is she? I heard Huang Hanfei say she's a bounty hunter. Well, Huang Hanfei is right, this little girl is indeed a bounty hunter, and she is also a veteran amongst them. Her name is Shen Mengdai, and she is also a first-ranked demon domain powerhouse. It is said that this girl spends a lot of money, usually rely on the bounty to live. As long as our police issued a bounty order, she will certainly be the first to go to register for the registration. Is a money-minded guy. The old officer didn't think too highly of Shen Mengdai, and in his opinion, a woman who liked money too much was not a good woman. So her name is Shen Mengdai. Zhang Zhe nodded. Hey! What happened to Shen Mingdia's face? The old officer suddenly realized that Shen Mingdia's face had been painted with many strange patterns, appearing to be some kind of reptile with a shell, and couldn't help but ask. On the side, Zhang Feng quietly hid the marker and shook his head as if he didn't know. I don't know. When we saw her, her face melted into this. Zhang Zhe looked at his sister for a moment, and the two of them looked at each other with another knowing smile on their faces. The old officer arranged for people to bring both Huang Hanfei and Shen Mingdai onto the police car. He turned to Zhang Zhe and said, Huang Hanfei's bounty is $1.5 million. Since you said that you only caught Huang Hanfei by cooperating with Shen Mingdai, then the bounty is half each for the two of you, and after shaving off the personal income tax that was paid, each of you can get about $600,000. In a few days, we'll notify you, and then you'll bring your documents to the police station to complete the formalities, and within 10 working days, the bounty will be credited to your account. Zhang Feng's eyes widened at the side, and he said to his brother with an excited face, $600,000. That's a lot. Zhang Zhe was also happy in his heart. This money was also considered a windfall. If he added those spending cards he got from Huang Hanfei before, then his income today would be even more lucrative. If I add up all my money, I might be able to consider buying my sister the right to use an artificial kidney permanently. Zhang Zhe's eyes instantly lit up. That way we won't have to worry about rent in the future. After Lu Wei and the old officer said goodbye to Zhang Zhe, they got in the car and left the neighborhood. The siblings also returned to their own home in high spirits. Because of the shock just now coupled with the surprise later, the two people's moods were like a roller coaster, so excited that they almost didn't sleep for the whole night. The next morning, Zhang Feng didn't get up to cook either, and the brother and sister duo went out for the first time to have a bite at a small restaurant before each of them ran to school. After arriving at the school, Zhang Zhe met Lu Wei outside the classroom and was complimented again, but Zhang Zhe also asked Mr. Lu Wei not to make a big deal out of this. He still preferred to keep a low profile. One day without words, after school, Zhang Zhe once again came to work at the school martial arts center, only to see Jing Hao just as he entered the center. As soon as Jing Hao saw Zhang Zhe walk into the martial arts center, he took the initiative to go forward and greet him. Zhang Zhe, how are you, remember me? I'm Jing Hao. Remember, do you want something from me? Zhang Zhe looked at Jing Hao indifferently and asked. Hehe, it's not a big deal. Isn't it looking like the martial arts exam is coming up? I want to find an evenly matched classmate to practice with. How about it, have a fight with me? Jing Hao was all smiles as he extended his hand to Zhang Zhe. Chapter 47, You Can't Leave Me Behind. Zhang Zhe looked at Jing Hao's hand and slowly shook his head. I'm sorry, I still have work to do, and besides, I'm not your opponent, so please go find someone else. After saying that, Zhang Zhe also stopped paying attention to Jing Hao and went straight to the locker room to prepare to get tools to clean up. Jing Hao bristled and withdrew his outstretched hand, saying loudly behind Zhang Zhe, You don't need to hide. I know that you are very strong and are definitely qualified to enter the Qing University Martial Arts School, but I have to tell you that there are only 2 spots in our school. One of them has already been internalized, and the remaining one can only be me. Zhang Zhe's footsteps paused for a moment, but he didn't say anything and continued to walk towards the dressing room. Seeing Zhang Zhe's lack of response, Jing Hao grunted and turned around to leave the martial arts center. It turns out that there are only 2 places in our school, so just now Jing Hao said that one person has been internalized. Who exactly is that person? Zhang Zhe secretly thought in his mind. After cleaning up, Zhang Zhe returned home and prepared to enter the magic realm after having dinner. Welcome to the magic realm. May I ask which floor you are going to? First level. Second level. Third level. Fourth floor. The deadly domain had already been cleared, and the 4th floor should be free to move around, so Zhang Zhe immediately chose the 4th floor, and with a flash of the scenery in front of him, he arrived at the altar on the 4th floor. The place had indeed returned to normal, with players freely entering and exiting the place, and Zhang Zhe looked at his team of summoned monsters. There's a big gap in the team, but I don't see the need to go back to the 3rd floor to summon goblins. I have the Death Butcher and Goblin King on hand, and with the cooperation of the Sky Swallowing Frog's long-range fireballs, I should be able to deal with the monsters on this floor. The magic guide mentions that the monsters on the 4th level are the Hoghead Monster, the Flying Birdman and the Boss Bullhead Commander. Zhongzhe hadn't gone far from the altar before he saw the Pighead Monster and the Flying Birdman. The pig-headed monster was close to 2 meters tall, and unlike what Zhongzhe had imagined, this guy did not have a trace of fat on his body. It was too strong for words. Zhongzhe even saw 6-pack abs on its stomach. Coupled with the fact that it held 2 hammers covered in iron spikes in its hands, the wind of pugnacity greeted it. The Flying Birdman seems to be female from the looks of it, as it carries female features, but this guy is not easy to deal with, as it often flies up into the sky, and then fires sharp feathers from the sky at targets on the ground, which do a lot of damage. Zhongzhe found a sparsely populated out-of-the-way place alone, summoned all of his summoned monsters in one go, and then began to clear the surrounding small monsters. The Pighead Monster's attacks were fierce, but its defense was average, and an ordinary player who wanted to deal with it had to have a high enough defense, otherwise, he would be bloodied by his hammer in a few rounds. Not only that, but one must also beware of the Flying Birdman flying in the sky. This thing basically won't fall down during the battle, so the melee professions can't do anything with it, and one must rely on the long-range professions, similar to the likes of archers and mages in order to deal with it. Zhongzhe didn't have these worries. He had the Kobold King and the Death Butcher as his melee profession, and for long-range attacks, he had the Tuning Frog as his artilleryman, so it was really easy to fight the monsters. In addition, he was equipped with an S-rank weapon, and his attack power had increased by a large margin, and now, the damage dealt by his bow and arrow could break through triple digits. -177. Rakshasa. -271. Goblin King. -426. Butcher of Death. -339. Swallowing Frog. After some killing, Zhongzhe's team had added 3 pighead monsters and 3 flying birdmen, and the team was finally full. In fact, Zhongzhe had thought about filling his team with bosses before, but after some consideration, Zhongzhe put this plan down for the time being because the bosses of each layer were too sought after. With people attacking them almost every moment, it would be difficult for Zhongzhe to grab them, and, if he went to grab the bosses every day, he was afraid that it would also attract the attention of certain people, and Zhongzhe did not want to cause unnecessary trouble. In fact, the high-level Demon Realm monsters were not weak, and unless he encountered a Dead Realm boss or a high-level Demon Realm adventurer, Zhongzhe was not afraid of any of them. Just as Zhongzhe retrieved all the summoned monsters and was about to go in search of the 4th-level boss, the bull-headed commander, he suddenly heard a girl's cry for help from a short distance away. "Help! Someone's trying to kill me." Zhongzhe frowned and looked in the direction the voice came from, only to see a small girl, running in panic behind her. A man carrying an iron bar upside down was in hot pursuit, shouting as he ran, "Stop right there! I have to teach you a lesson today." Zhongzhe turned around and ignored it. This kind of thing was staged every day in the magic domain, and anyway, it had little to do with him, so Zhongzhe did not want to meddle in it. However, he didn't mess with things to mess with him, and the little girl saw Zhongzhe and even fled in his direction. "Big brother! Please save me quickly. That man in the back wants to kill me." The little girl named Moonlight Bunny in the magic realm hugged Zhongzhe and looked at him with tears in her eyes. Zhongzhe locked his brows. He really didn't want to mind his own business, so he said, "I'm sorry, I can't save you, so hurry up and escape back to the altar. You'll be safe once you get there." After saying that, Zhongzhe tried to push the little girl away. Who knows, that little girl suddenly shouted, "Big brother! I've done everything you asked me to do, and now that person is coming after me. You can't leave me behind. I'll give you everything." "Zhongzhe?" Just then, the man carrying the iron rod also rushed to Zhongzhe, just in time to hear what the girl said, and immediately a pair of angry eyes looked at Zhongzhe. "So it was you who secretly instigated her?" The man crossed his iron rod and said angrily, "I hate your kind of scum the most. Today, I'm going to rid the people of evil." Zhongzhe looked at the iron rod man, only to see that the name of this guy's magic domain was called Grumpy Dragon King. It is really a person as his name is really grumpy, and he is going to make a move indiscriminately. Zhang Zhe had no choice but to spread his hands and explain, "Brother, don't be fooled by her. I don't have any relationship with her and I didn't ask her to do anything. Settle your grudges yourselves and leave me out of it." Upon hearing Zhang Zhe's words, the irascible Dragon King became even angrier as he said loudly, "Are you still a man? When things fall apart, you skim off and throw your companions away. I hate people like you the most. Cut the crap and come over to fight me." Zhang Zhe was speechless. This grumpy Dragon King was not only bad-tempered, but also had a bit of a brain problem. "Big brother, I'll leave this place to you. I'll go first. Good luck defeating this madman." The little girl smiled and waved her hand at Zhang Zhe before turning around and running. Chapter 48, To Learn from One's Mistakes. Moonlight Bunny has stolen 3 medium-rank magic soul orbs from you. A line of hints flashed past Zhang Zhe's eyes, and Zhang Zhe froze for a moment, then understood this girl is a thief. No wonder, the irascible Dragon King chased her. I guess she must have stolen something from her too. Zhang Zhe laughed bitterly and shook his head. He did not expect that he had fallen into the trap, but fortunately, the most valuable things on his body had not been stolen. The 3 middle-ranked magic soul orbs were only a few $1,000s, so it did not hurt. But looking at how angry the grumpy Dragon King was, I wonder what valuable things he had stolen by that Moonlight Bunny. Zhang Zhe said to the grumpy Dragon King, "I'm really not in league with that thief, she just stole from me as well, now go after her and don't tangle with me here." "Ugh. All her things were given to you just now. You'll never try to trick me." The irascible Dragon King stared intently at Zhang Zhe, who was already in a fighting stance, ready to attack at any time. "You have been targeted by the grumpy Dragon King, prepare for battle." "Ugh. You people." Seeing this line of prompts, Zhang Zhe shook his head helplessly and was forced to enter combat. "Don't worry. I won't take your life, you just need to return what that little girl stole from me," the irascible Dragon King said to Zhang Zhe. Zhang Zhe looked helpless. "She didn't give me anything, so how can I give it to you? Looks like you're toast. Fine. We can only fight to the death. Drink." The irascible Dragon King swung his iron club and charged. But just as he ran halfway, he was met by a spider web that covered his head, and his entire body was trapped in place. He was astonished and went up. What's going on? How could there be poisonous spiders on the 4th floor? The poisonous spiders were summoned by me, Zhang Zhe said indifferently. The grumpy Dragon King's eyes widened at once, and he saw a huge spider standing behind Zhang Zhe. He looked at Zhang Zhe in shock. You can summon monsters? Is this your natural skill?" Zhang Zhe did not reply as he summoned the heaven-swallowing frog again, ordering it to slam a fireball after a fireball at the grumpy Dragon King. At the same time, Zhang Zhe himself drew his own bow and arrow, shooting like the grumpy Dragon King. He counted on seeing through the fact that he couldn't communicate with this guy in a normal way, unless he beat this guy into submission and maybe understand what he was saying. -117. Swallowing Frog. -98. Rakshasa, damn it. Have the guts not to let your poisonous spiders trap me with their webs. Let's get up close and personal. Let's see who's better. The irascible Dragon King wailed in anger. Zhang Zhe hummed disdainfully, "Are you stupid? My advantage is long-range attacks. Why would I give up my advantage to fight you physically? Pissed me off." The irascible Dragon King was so angry that his face was openly red. He suddenly took out a bottle of potion and drank it in one gulp, and immediately his entire body emitted a red glow. At the same time, he broke free from the shackles of the spiderweb and angrily rushed towards Zhang Zhe. "Eh?" Zhang Zhe's eyes narrowed. He clearly remembered that he had just put a spider web on the irascible Dragon King, and it would take at least another 20 seconds for him to break free, so how did he break free so quickly? It must have something to do with the potion he drank just now. Zhang Zhe thought for a moment. It seems like it's in the same category as before. the potion that fury-slaying Wind Chaser drank, ignoring any negative statuses at the cost of sacrificing his defense. I'm going to smash your head flat. The irascible Dragon King slammed an iron club hard at Zhang Zhe. But his stick fell short as Zhang Zhe had already dodged to the side. This guy. So fast. The grumpy Dragon King was secretly surprised in his heart. His attack speed was not low, and it was difficult for an ordinary person to dodge it, but Zhang Zhe dodged it with ease, and obviously had a high agility value. Don't run. Eat my stick. The grumpy Dragon King was in hot pursuit of Zhang Zhe, and Zhang Zhe immediately used his summoning technique, and the Goblin King appeared from behind him, stopping the grumpy Dragon King in its tracks. Crap. It's the Goblin King. Just how many monsters can you guys summon? The grumpy Dragon King's eyes went wide as he immediately stopped and readjusted his battle stance. Although the Goblin King was the third-level boss, it wasn't that easy to deal with. If he was with his other companions there would definitely be no problem, but right now there was only the grumpy Dragon King alone, so he had to be careful, not to mention that there was also a Zhang Zhe and other summoned monsters eyeing him from the side. -226. Goblin King. 124. Swallowing Frog. -84. Rakshasa. The grumpy Dragon King had to face the Goblin King head-on, while on the other side, he was also attacked by Zhang Zhe and the heaven-swallowing frogs and poison spiders, so it could be said that it was a back-and-forth attack, and even if he had a very thick blood count, he could not withstand such a back-and-forth attack. Piss me off. A bunch of you can beat one of me. This is not fair. The grumpy Dragon King was furious, but Zhang Zhe said indifferently, we're not in a martial arts competition, so where's the fairness in that? As long as I can beat you, it's fine. With that, Zhang Zhe summoned the Death Butcher again. Seeing the Death Butcher wielding his twin swords to kill himself, the grumpy Dragon King completely collapsed, and he immediately shouted, Stop, stop, stop. No more fighting. I admit defeat. Being swarmed by 3 major bosses, even if the grumpy Dragon King was a skilled level adventurer, he couldn't stand it. Zhang Zhe immediately called all the summoned monsters back and said with a calm face, admitted defeat? Can you listen to me now? Grumpy Dragon King sat on his butt on the ground, opened a bottle of recovery potion and gulped it down on his head, huffing and puffing, although I admit defeat, I'm not convinced. If you have the guts, don't summon those monsters out, let's fight one-on-one. Zhang Zhe also smilingly sat down opposite the grumpy Dragon King and said, that is absolutely impossible. My natural skill is summoning, how can I fight you if you don't let me use my skill? Humph. I'm just not convinced anyway. The irascible Dragon King pushed his head aside, still furious. What did that Moonlight Bunny steal from you? Zhang Zhe asked, and the grumpy Dragon King said in a rude voice, aren't you and her in the same gang? She just gave you everything, and you're still asking me? You want to deliberately piss me off. Zhang Zhe was speechless for a while, so he could only explain once again, I repeat, I'm really not in league with that thief. She stole my stuff too. After saying that, Zhang Zhe sent a screenshot of the system prompt he had just sent to the grumpy Dragon King to see, to prove his innocence. Crap, was it really my mistake? The grumpy Dragon King was embarrassed, he scratched his nose and said with some embarrassment, that was really my mistake, I say sorry to you. It's fine, it's good that the misunderstanding is cleared up. Zhang Zhe smiled, although this grumpy Dragon King had a straight temperament and a one-track mind, his character was good, and it was rare for him to know his mistakes and correct them. Chapter 49, You're dead, Rakshasa, alas. Forget it, consider yourself unlucky. The irascible Dragon King stood up as he stretched out his hand to Zhang Zhe and said, let's make a good friend without fighting. It was the first time for Zhang Zhe to meet such a self-centered person, although this grumpy Dragon King had a tendon in his head, but his personality was quite to Zhang Zhe's liking. Zhang Zhe laughed and added his friend. Okay. You can call me if you need any help in the future. The Stormskin Dragon King waved his hand at Zhang Zhe and said, I still have a few friends who have asked me to fight a boss, so I'll leave first, see you later. After saying that, and not being able to have Zhangzhe react, he turned around and ran away. Zhangzhe was amused in his heart. This incident was considered a minor incident, and he also turned around and headed towards the boss on the 4th floor. This 4th floor is like a maze, it's easy to get lost if you mess up. Zhangzhe looked around and spat at the almost identical walls. Luckily, though, this level of the maze is fixed and doesn't change, so someone had run through this ride of the maze early on and created a map. The Guide to the Magic Kingdom includes this map for the convenience of later adventurers. Zhangzhe relied on this map to make his way through the maze of 7 turns to the location of the final boss. Just after turning in, Zhangzhe heard a familiar voice. Help! Huh? That sounds like that Moonlight Bunny. Zhangzhe looked around at the sound, and sure enough, it was the Moonlight Bunny, but she wasn't in a good condition right now. Only to see that Moonlight Bunny was blocked in a corner, and she erected a wall of ice in front of herself to block the boss Minotaur commander who was launching a fierce attack on her. Outside, there was a pig-headed monster, and to Zhangzhe's surprise, the name on top of this pig-headed monster's head wasn't Pighead Monster, but Daybreak Rain. How could a monster have such a name? Zhangzhe frowned, puzzled in his heart, only to hear the pig-headed monster named by Ryu speak, "Damn girl. Letting you steal my things. Deserves to die." Bai Rui's tone was filled with a vicious tone, clearly hating the Moonlight Bunny. The Moonlight Bunny, who was cornered, was so scared that she only cried because that bull-headed commander boss across the street was too fierce, and the ice wall that she had erected using the Ice Wall Talisman was about to be smashed by the bull-headed commander. Without this ice wall, I'm afraid that with her trash attributes, she would have been killed by the bullhead commander in minutes. Oh, someone help me. I don't want to die. Moonlight Bunny looked pitiful as he huddled in the corner. Zhangzhe bristled, although this Moonlight Bunny was abominable for stealing from people, but it was not a crime so heinous that he had to be sentenced to death. In the real world, thieves don't get the death penalty outright either. That was why Zhangzhe directly walked up and shot an arrow at the back of the bull-headed commander's head, drawing the bull-headed commander over. Hey! What are you doing? Don't be a fucking meddler. Bai Ryu shouted angrily at Zhangzhe, she's a thief. She deserves to die. Zhangzhe pulled away from the bullhead commander and casually said, I know she's a thief, but there's no need to push her to her death, right? Moreover, she's not too old, so why don't you give her a chance to reform? Humph. That's because you haven't had anything stolen from her. Don't advise others to be generous if you haven't experienced their suffering. Bai Ryu perked up, but when he saw that Zhangzhe was just a person, a disdainful look appeared on his face again. So you're trying to save a beauty from a hero? Don't you see if you have the strength? Bai Ryu sneered, this is the 4th level boss, you can't deal with it alone. Don't ask me for help later, I don't care if you live or die. Don't worry, I can handle it myself. Zhangzhe smiled faintly, then avoided the charge of the bull-headed commander, and with a thought, he invoked all of his summoned beasts, 3 pig-headed monsters, 3 flying birdmen, and a poisonous spider. The 3 major bosses all stood behind Zhangzhe in a huff, making Bai Ryu look at him in disbelief. Crap. All these monsters were summoned by you? Bai Ryu's eyes were glazed over, it was the first time he had ever seen this kind of natural skill. Zhangzhe also ignored him, and the opposite bull-headed commander charged towards him again. He immediately commanded the poison spider to trap the bull-headed commander, and then, all of his minions rushed forward and surrounded the bull-headed commander. -161. Rakshasa. -245. Goblin King. -419. Butcher of Death. -307. Swallowing Frog. -110. -172. Birdman. Good guy. I can actually even summon a boss. Isn't this fucking invincible? Bai Ryu looked envious and jealous. His natural skill, disguise, was trash compared to Zhangzhe, who had just utilized his skill to disguise himself as a pig-headed monster. This skill is basically useless at all except for blinding your opponent. Rakshasa. By Ryu memorized Zhongzai's demon domain name in his heart, he turned his head to look at the Moonlight Bunny, who was still cowering in the corner again, and cursed in his heart, "Dead girl. Count yourself lucky this time. There's an idiot willing to help you." Afterward, Bai Ryu left the place. He thought about it just now, it was too dangerous for him to stay here, in case this one called Rakshasa and that Moonlight Bunny colluded and made a move against him, he wouldn't even have a chance to escape. Although the boss on the 4th floor was also very strong, it was still losing ground in front of Zhongzai's summoned beasts, and with the fact that Zhongzai's team still had the Death Domain Super Boss Death Butcher in their ranks, the battle was even easier. 149. Rakshasa. Congratulations, you've killed the 4th level boss, the Bullhead Commander. Zhongzai gave the boss a final blow. The bull-headed commander covered his chest and howled, then collapsed to the ground with a loud bang. Bursting out a field of items, Zhongzai directly collected them in his gold backpack, then summoned a bull-headed commander to burst out. I didn't expect that the 4th level boss would be defeated so easily. I can head to the 5th level. Zhongzai looked at the stone door key in his backpack and was happy in his heart. Thanks. Moonlight Bunny didn't know when she stood next to Zhongzai. She bowed to him and then threw the things she had stolen from him earlier on the ground, and the person ran away. Don't steal from people again. Zhongzai shouted at the back of the Moonlight Thief, and the Moonlight Bunny's body paused for a moment, still running away without looking back. Picking the items up, Zhongzai passed through the stone door and entered the 5th floor, and the scenery in front of him changed again. Damn. I saw that dead girl being killed by the Bullhead Commander. Suddenly a Rakshasa comes out to meddle in my business, it really pisses me off. Inside a rented room, white light flashed and a lewd man in his 30s appeared. It's not worth getting upset over these people. Eat something and go to bed, I can still afford to work early tomorrow. The lewd man stretched his back and rinsed himself a bag of instant noodles, then ate while swiping the Magic Domain forum on his phone. A reward posting? The lewd man's eyes lit up as he hurriedly opened it to check the contents. A few minutes later the corner of his mouth curled up and he sneered, "Rakshasa. You're dead." Chapter 50, Reward Posting. The 5th level of the Magic Realm, the Altar. There are a lot less adventurers on this level again. Zhongzai thought in his heart as he looked around at the scattered adventurers. Although this time now was already midnight in the real world, the number of adventurers was still high if they were in the first 4 floors. Let's just say that the adventurers who really have the strength to kill their way to the 5th floor are perhaps only 3 or 4 out of 10. Zhongzai didn't intend to go out and fight monsters, he just wanted to activate this layer first, then he would go offline to rest, and the next time he came back up, he would just choose it directly. The body is the capital of the revolution. Zhongzai also has a sister to take care of. Pay more attention to physical health, so he does not want to stay up all night in the magic realm. To the rest time should go to bed anyway. The opening time of the magic domain was from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day, so Zhongzai could get up earlier the next day to enter the magic domain to fight monsters. Just as he was about to go offline, Zhongzai suddenly received a friend message from Lu Yueying. Curious, Zhongzai opened it and read it, only to see that Lu Yueying had written in the message, "You've been put up for a bounty. Go to the Magic Domain forum and take a look, the first one at the top of the bounty area in there is the bounty post about you." Zhongzai instantly frowned, and he knew about the Magic Domain forum. This Magic Realm forum does not belong to any country and no one can find out the real location of the forum. All Magic Realm adventurers around the world can log into the forum, exchange experiences and speak freely. Zhongzai usually liked to go up there when he had nothing else to do, but he had never been to the bounty area. Leaving the Magic Realm, Zhongzai immediately picked up his cell phone and opened the Magic Realm forum, entering the bounty area, and sure enough, the first bounty post on top was about him. Reward post. Name, Rakshasa. Sex, male. Profession, archer. Age, appearance, age unknown, masked dress. Country. Dashya. What's the bounty? Provide any information about the Rakshasa and receive a bounty. Bounty amount. Depending on the information provided, you can get a bounty ranging from $1 million to $5 million. Client, Human Aurora. Aurora. Seeing these two words, Zhang Zai's pupils instantly shrunk, and he had already guessed who exactly had posted the bounty post. It must be the message that the Kiss of Death sent to his organization before he died. That's why these people know that he died at my hands. Zhang Zai clenched his chin, analyzing things in his mind. This post was posted on the forum. There is no way for me to get rid of it. It seems like I will encounter a lot of trouble in the future. Zhang Zai skimmed his mouth. He wasn't really terrified in his heart. He now possessed 4 big bosses. Even if he encountered a bunch of people besieging him, Zhang Zai had no fear. However, it's easy to hide from open fire, but hard to guard against secret arrows. I'm afraid that the other party will secretly do something bad and engage in a sneak attack while I'm fighting monsters, which will be more troublesome. It seems that I need to find some reliable companions, and with them behind me, I won't have to worry about people making trouble behind my back anymore. Speaking of looking for a reliable partner, Zhang Zai's mind flashed to a few people: Lu Yueying, Furious Kill Chasing Wind, Furious Dragon King. While thinking about this, Zhang Zai continued to look through the forums, and as a result, he suddenly found a bounty post, and the commissioner was actually Moonlight Bunny. Curious, Zhang Zai clicked on it and took a look. Reward post. Reward content: help the client to travel to the 30th floor of the magic domain. Note matters: the client is currently stuck on the 4th level. Bounty amount: the client's entire fortune, about $1 million. Client, Moonlight Bunny. $1 million to get someone to take her to the 30th floor of the magic realm. This price is too low. But why did this Moonlight Bunny go to the 30th floor of the demon realms? Zhang Zai was curious in his heart, but this belonged to people's personal privacy, so Zhang Zai was not interested in prying. As the night grew darker, Zhang Zai turned off his cell phone and went to sleep. The next day, Zhang Zai came to school. The students in the class had consciously split into 2 camps. One camp was the ones with more excellent natural skills, basically students above C rank, and the topics they talked about revolved around fighting monsters in the magic realm and how to become strong in the magic realm. The students in the other camp, which were the ones with more trashy natural skills and hadn't even reached C rank, had lost hope in becoming strong in the magic realm, and began to face reality and study what to do in the future path of their lives. These people will go to some ordinary universities, graduate with a diploma, join a certain company to lead an ordinary life, and then marry and have children to train new talents for the country. They are the cornerstone of the country to the state at best, and actually a reproductive tool at worst. Although they were unwilling, the reality was in front of them. Their talent was too trashy to survive in the magic domain, so they could only return to reality. After all, people still have to live. Previously, Wang Yan had asked Zhang Zai what level the talent skill was, and Zhang Zai had casually said a C level, so he was also pulled into the crowd of the first camp, listening to everyone talking feverishly about what they had seen and heard in the magic realm. Hey, have you guys heard? A few days ago, a dead domain appeared in the 4th layer of the demon domain. The entire 4th layer was blocked by the Magic Domain Authority, and no one was allowed to go out. Are you the Village Pass Network? The news has been spreading for a long time. No one doesn't know about this. I was present at that time. I heard later that the boss of the deadly domain was killed by people from our great summer country. Those foreigners returned in defeat. It's fun to think about it. Really? Crap. That's great. We, the people of the great summer country, can finally raise our eyebrows. Do you know who killed it? This great god has kind of done the country a favor. I think the country could totally give him an award of some kind. Rakshasa. Everyone who was in the Deadlands at that time received this prompt. And it was prompted a total of 3 times. It's simply awesome. Zhang Zai sat next to him, listening to his classmates praising him non-stop. Even if he was thick-skinned, he felt a little embarrassed. Rakshasa? This name is so familiar. Wang Yang scratched his head and suddenly slapped his thigh and said, "Crap. This Rakshasa is my savior. Zhang Zhe, do you still remember? Last time I told you about it, I was kidnapped and it was this big guy who saved me. What a surprise. He even killed the Death Domain boss. I want to worship him more and more now." Wang Yang's two small eyes had little hearts bubbling straight out of them as he looked at Zhang Zhe's back covered in goosebumps. Just then, the door to the classroom room was suddenly kicked open, and a man with an exploded head and earrings walked into the classroom. "Who's called Zhang Zhe? Come out." The classroom fell silent, and everyone looked at the man with a look of surprise in their eyes. Chapter 51, The Punk Crocodile. "What the fuck are you looking at?" "I'm looking for Zhang Zhe." "Zhang Zhe? Get your ass out here." Explosive Head walked up to the podium, slammed the table, and rushed. "Who is he? Doesn't seem to be from our school." "You don't know? He's a gang leader active in the area around our school. His real name is unknown, everyone calls him Crocodile." "What is he looking for Zhang Zhe for? Did Zhang Zhe offend him? Boy, I'm afraid Zhang Zhe is going to suffer after messing with this plague god." The students whispered underneath, and from time to time, some sneaked glances at Zhang Zhe. Zhang Zhe stood up calmly and said, "I'm Zhang Zhe, what are you looking for me for? I don't seem to recognize you." "You don't know me, but I know you." The crocodile heatedly sneered and said, "My underlings said that you want to replace me and take over my territory. You don't have a lot of guts." Zhang Zhe instantly frowned and shook his head. "You've misunderstood, I've never said anything like that, and I'm not interested in being the head gangster." "You who? The head of the gang? You're looking down on me." The crocodile took a few steps in front of Zhang Zhe, grabbed him by the collar, and said through gritted teeth, "Today, I'll let you know how powerful I am." Zhang Zhe's eyes narrowed slightly and his fists clenched. As long as this guy dared to make a move, he would immediately counterattack. "What are you doing? This is a school, not a place for you punks. Get out of here, before I call the police." Just then, Lu Wei's yelling voice came from the doorway. There were many punks like Crocodile around the school, and most of these people started loitering and messing around because they didn't get into the martial arts school and didn't want to go live a normal life. Although the police have also carried out centralized remediation, but the effect is not satisfactory. After a few days of abatement, these people appeared again, so that the surrounding residents are very distressed. However, it was still relatively rare for these punks to come to the school and cause trouble. After all, there were also many powerful students and teachers in the school that they could not afford to mess with, so they rarely came here. Lu Wei also wondered why this kid named Crocodile would come to the school to cause trouble. The crocodile grunted, let go of Zhang Zhe, and said, "Now I'll let you go first, and at the small square behind the school at night, we'll settle the score slowly." "I won't go." Zhang Zhe shook his head. He was not interested in fighting with a punk. It would not benefit him at all. "You're not going? Okay." The crocodile didn't seem to care as he heatedly laughed. "Then I'll go to the 4th Heavenly Abundance Girls' School to talk to your sister." "Heh heh heh. How dare you?" Zhang Zhe's eyes instantly stood up. A murderous aura, if any, burst out from him. The crocodile shrugged and laughed, angry. "Then you'll go to the small square tonight, where I can't guarantee what will happen to your sister." After saying that, the kid strutted out of the classroom. Zhang Zhe took a deep breath and slowly sat down. "Is it all right? Do you want me to help you find a few people?" At night, Wang Yang whispered to Zhang Zhe from the side. "No need. I can handle it myself." Zhang Zhe shook his head. His sister Zhang Feng was Zhang Zhe's scales, and Zhang Zhe would never let go of anyone who dared to hit his sister's idea. Lu Wei walked to Zhang Zhe, gently patted his shoulder, and said, "Don't be general with these punks, these guys can't wait to find something to do." "I reckon, he was just scaring you just now." Zhang Zhe coldly did not say anything. That crocodile even knew which school his sister was in. He felt that things were not that simple. "By the way, the police department side asked me to inform you that tomorrow you can take your ID and go to the police station to collect the bounty." Lu Wei smiled and said, go get the reward you deserve. After school, Zhang Zhe finished cleaning the martial arts center and walked straight towards the small square behind the school. When he came to the small square, Zhang Zhe saw 3 or 4 people standing on the opposite side, and the leader was none other than that crocodile. Haha. It seems like you really care about your sister. Could it be that you are the legendary spoiled sister demon? The crocodile fiddled with the iron finger tiger in his hand and said with an obscene face. The remaining few gangsters also let out obscene laughter. In their opinion, Zhang Zhe was simply looking for death when he dared to come here alone. Zhang Zhe stood opposite the crocodile with an expressionless face, put his backpack aside and said, come on. Hurry up, I have to rush back home to enter the magic realm. Humph. The crocodile came forward with a somewhat grim expression on his face as he said fiercely, seeing you tugging and pulling like that makes my hands itch. You won't be able to go home today, go straight to the hospital. After saying that, the crocodile fiercely punched at Zhang Zhe. This crocodile was awakened with a B-rank natural skill at first, and was considered a very outstanding student in his class, only that he later failed to get into the Qingda martial arts school, and he was unwilling to go to other ordinary martial arts schools, and finally fell into a gangster. However, his own strength was actually not weak. After these few years of crawling around in the demon region, his own attributes had been strengthened and enhanced, and if he were to take the Qing University Martial Arts School now, he would be able to completely pass the examination. It was a pity that the Qingda Martial Arts School only accepted fresh graduates, and those from previous years were not even considered. After all, Qing University Martial Arts School is too popular, plus the number of places enrolled each year is very limited, and fresh graduates can't even be recruited, not to mention those from previous years. Zhang Zhe watched as the crocodile's fist zoomed in front of him, and when that fist was only 0 centimeters away from the tip of his nose, he moved. Dodge sideways, step in with your right foot, lean forward and fling your right arm. Snap. A clean right hand lands directly on crocodile's right cheek. Zhang Zhe had left his strength intact, although the other party had said that they wanted to find trouble with his sister, but after all, they had not put it into action yet, so Zhang Zhe did not lay his hands on her. One should know that his current strength points were already as high as 14. If he were to test it on a force measuring machine, it would be at least over 1,000 pounds. 500 pounds of punching power on an ordinary person could knock them out, while 1,000 pounds could be fatal. Zhang Zhe was afraid that he would break the crocodile's neck if he exerted his full strength. The crocodile's body flew out horizontally. It hit a tree hard, and the whole thing slowly collapsed. He suffered a brief coma from the impact on his head, while gold stars rose before his eyes, and his right cheek rapidly swelled up as blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. The few punks in the back had thought that crocodile would knock Zhang Zhe over with a single punch, and they were about to scream, but the reality came in a big reversal, and the one who was knocked over turned out to be crocodile. What the hell? Boss, crocodile was actually knocked down. Crap. Just one punch. How heavy is this punching power? Called Zhang Zhe. What do we do? Should we go? Go up your mom. The crocodile boss has been knocked down, is it useful for us to go up? A few punks looked at each other in disbelief, then turned around and ran away. Chapter 52, I'm not happy. Zhang Zhe walked to the crocodile, which had just become somewhat lucid, but was still in a daze, its mouth stuttering without knowing what it was saying. He had lost 2 teeth, half of his face was completely swollen, and naturally he couldn't speak well. Zhang Zhe squatted down in front of the crocodile and said coldly, stay away from me and my sister in the future, or I'll knock all your teeth out of your mouth. Standing up, Zhang Zhe picked up his things and left the small square. A few minutes later, in the woods next to the small square, a man came out slowly, holding a device similar to a speedometer, and his face was cloudy when he saw the value on it. This person was none other than Jing Hao. The punching power is about 1,046 pounds. Jing Hao sucked in a mouthful of cold air. His current punching power had just broken through 800 pounds, and this was only as a result of his recent period of time, desperately absorbing the power demon soul orb. He had thought that he could leave Zhang Zhe far behind, and the results of the test in front of him threw a pot of cold water on him. What exactly did Zhang Zhe do? Why has his fist power increased so quickly? I remember a few days ago, he was only 497 pounds on the fist power testing machine, and now he's already 1,000 pounds. Jing Hao clenched his own teeth and shivered. Now even if he absorbed more power demon soul orbs every day, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to catch up with Zhang Zhe. What's more, the magic soul sphere didn't mean that you could absorb it just because you wanted to, it had a lot to do with one's physical quality. Some people were physically fit and could absorb the magic soul orb better, to the point where a high-level magic soul orb could raise the attribute value by 2 points. Some people had average physical qualities, and a magic soul orb boosted them a bit, which was not too bad. However, if your physical quality is poor, I'm afraid that even if you absorb more magic soul orbs, it will be difficult to improve a little. If it is ignored and the magic soul ball is absorbed madly, it is also easy to lead to serious consequences, such as the bursting of blood vessels and meridians. Jing Hao's physical quality was average. Every time he absorbed a magic soul orb, he could raise his attribute value by 1 point. He was already satisfied with this result because there were more people who couldn't absorb it at all. Could Zhang Zhe be so physically fit? Could it be that I will never be able to catch up with him? Jing Hao looked at the data on the tester and his expression became more and more hideous. I gave so much. I'm not willing. He yelled up to the sky, filled with indignation. Jing Hao is a strong child since childhood. Because of family reasons, he has always been very high on their own requirements. Others cannot do things he wants to do, others can do things he wants to do the best. Whether it was his studies or martial arts, he strived for perfection. There are times when there are indeed some conditions that are not as good as others, and he will try to find a way out from other aspects, even at the expense of using some dishonorable means. There was only one purpose: he wanted to prove that he was better than anyone else. Just like the Zhang Zhe incident, Jing Hao regarded Zhang Zhe as his potential rival, and although Zhang Zhe had no intention of competing with Jing Hao was unwilling to let Zhang Zhe. Goth gangster called Crocodile is actually Jing Hao's henchman. Jing Hao is a good student on the surface, usually treating people gentle and elegant, but secretly, he has his own forces. As early as before he came to this school, he has already tried to find ways to enlist the surrounding gangsters too. His henchmen. Today, the Crocodile came to find Zhang Zhe in trouble, which was instructed by Jing Hao, and the purpose was to force Zhang Zhe to use his true strength. Just now, while the two of them were fighting, Jing Hao hid in the nearby grove and tested Zhang Zhe's punching power with the remote dynamometer in his hand, and the results surprised him. No way. I must go to the Qing University Martial Arts School. No one can take away the spot that belongs to me. Jing Hao took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. It seems necessary to use some extraordinary means. Jing Hao turned his head to look at the crocodile, who was still in a semi-conscious state, and secretly made a decision in his heart. Brother, why are you back so late today? I'll go and heat up some food for you. Seeing Zhang Zhe's return, Zhang Feng ran out from his bedroom, took Zhang Zhe's backpack, and ran all the way into the kitchen again. It was a treat for Zhang Zhe to have a bite of his sister's hot cooking every day. In his previous life, he was an only child, and his parents died early in his family, so he was very lonely on his own. Although there were no parents in this life either, at least there was a younger sister, allowing Zhang Zhe to experience long-lost affection. This was also the reason why Zhang Zhe valued his sister so much. Zhang Feng heated up the meal and brought it to the table, smilingly sitting on the opposite side of the table and watching Zhang Zhe eat. The two siblings chatted inadvertently. Does your girls' school have security? Zhang Zhe looked up and asked Zhang Feng. What happened today had given him a wake-up call, so he wanted to find out if security measures were in place at his sister's school. There are a few particularly powerful defense teachers in our school, and they are all said to be demon realm powerhouses. Zhang Feng nodded his head and replied. Zhang Zhe relaxed slightly. That's good. What's wrong? Are you worried about someone coming to our school and causing trouble? Don't worry, our school is safe. Zhang Feng gave Zhang Zhe a dish to his bowl, thought for a moment, and asked cautiously, "Brother, I see that you've been soaking in the magic realm and fighting monsters every day for the last while. What exactly is your natural skill?" "Well, this is a secret for now." Zhang Zhe pondered for a moment and said, "I'll tell you about my natural skill the day you awaken it." Che. Zhang Feng pouted her small mouth in dissatisfaction. She heard in school that the better the natural skill, the more people like to enter the magic domain. She saw that Zhang Zhe was soaking in the magic domain every day, so she had the guts to ask, but she didn't expect Zhang Zhe to sell a secret with her. After dinner, the time came to 8 o'clock, and Zhang Zhe once again entered the magic domain. "Welcome to the magic realm, may I ask which game you would like to choose?" Zhang Zhe directly chose the 5th floor, and as soon as he appeared, he noticed that there were many gazes sweeping back and forth over his body intentionally or unintentionally. Zhang Zhe also met those gazes and looked over. Those people who saw Zhang Zhe looking over all pretended to look away as if nothing had happened, but Zhang Zhe knew in his heart that he must have been targeted. It seems that the bounty posting has produced an effect. These people might want to go after me for the money. Zhang Zhe secretly thought in his heart, I can't go out right now, or else I'll easily be attacked by these people. After thinking about it, Zhang Zhe looked at his summoning space. At the moment, there were 8 monsters in his summoning space, which were a poison spider, a pig-head monster, 2 flying birdmen and the death butcher, 4 big bosses, the goblin king, the bull-headed commander, and the heaven-swallowing frog. I also need more powerful summoned monsters to be able to protect myself. Preferably all bosses. Chapter 53, Talent Skill, Shunned. Previously, Zhang Zhe had wanted to form a boss battle team, but because bosses were too sought after, this plan had never been implemented. Now that the situation was more unique, Zhang Zhe decided to start implementing the boss battle team program. Thinking of this, Zhang Zhe summoned the magic domain elf and reselected a few other layers of magic domain to log in. May I ask which level of the magic domain you are going to? The magic domain elf asked with a smile. Go to the 4th floor. Even if he wanted to form a boss battle team, he still had to pick strong bosses, and Zhang Zhe naturally had to start collecting bosses from the highest tier. With a flash of white light, Zhang Zhe disappeared from his original spot. The kid got away. Shit. He must have sensed it. I don't know what floor he ran to, it's going to be hard to see him next time. When the group of adventurers saw Zhang Zhe leaving the 5th layer of the magic domain, they were all depressed and angry, feeling that they had missed out on $1 billion. The 4th level of the devil's domain, the altar. Zhang Zhe's figure appeared. Since there were more adventurers on this floor, Zhang Zhe's appearance had not been noticed for the time being, and he immediately prepared to rush out and directly kill the bullhead commander's room. Who knew that he had just run out a few steps when a little girl stopped in front of her? Zhang Zhe was astonished that this girl was actually Moonlight Bunny. That. Can I ask you to do me a favor? The Moonlight Bunny stood in front of Zhang Zhe with her head lowered and asked timidly. Zhang Zhe frowned and said, I'm sorry, I have things to do, so please hire someone else. He didn't like thieves, so he didn't want to get more involved with this Moon Bunny. As a result, the Moonlight Bunny suddenly knelt down right in front of Zhang Zhe, whimpering and crying, apologizing while crying, I'm sorry. I didn't do the right thing last time, I shouldn't have stolen from you. But I really need the money. I have to get to the 30th level of the magic realm. Please help me. I really can't find anyone else. A little girl suddenly kneeling in front of him and crying non-stop caused Zhang Zhe to feel extremely embarrassed, while at the same time, the Moonlight Bunny's cries also drew the attention of the surrounding adventurers. Many people pointed and looked at Zhang Zhe with all sorts of complicated eyes, as if Zhang Zhe had done something he shouldn't have done to this girl. Zhang Zhe had a headache for a while as he pulled Moonlight Bunny up and said, have a good conversation. Don't kneel down. Oh, the Moonlight Bunny just wiped her tears as if she had been wronged in some big way. Okay. I agree to help you. Zhang Zhe nodded helplessly and said, but let's say up front, I'm also just a novice, I can't say which level I can help you to, I can only do my best. Okay. Thank you, Big Brother Rakshasa. As soon as the Moonlight Bunny heard that Zhongzhe had agreed, she was all smiles, and as soon as she dried her tears, she sent out a friend request to Zhongzhe. Zhongzhe added Moonlight Bunny's friend, and Moonlight Bunny immediately sent out another trade application, and Zhongzhe saw that Moonlight Bunny had put a lot of things on the trade bar, including magic soul orbs, equipment, and all sorts of props, but they were all very low-level items, not worth a few bucks. This is all the valuable stuff I have on me, I'll give it all to you. The Moonlight Bunny said with some embarrassment, I know that these things can't cover the payment I'm supposed to pay, but I'll work hard to earn money in the future, and then I'll slowly compensate you. Zhongzhe directly refused the deal and shook his head, you'd better keep these things for yourself, I'm going all the way to a higher level of the demon realm anyway, so consider it as taking you along. Thank you, Big Brother Rakshasa. The Moonlight Bunny froze for a moment, then bowed deeply to Zhongzhe again. When Zhongzhe saw many more adventurers looking over around him, he skimmed his lips and pulled the Moonlight Bunny and ran outside. Let's get out of here first, I'll take you to fight the 4th floor boss. The two made small talk as they advanced deeper into the maze. Zhongzhe asked Moonlight Bunny a question he had always been curious about. Does your natural skill steal things from the target? Yes. My innate skill is called Shunned, and although I don't like this innate skill, I don't have any other choice. Moonlight Bunny said somewhat helplessly. Is it any target that can be stolen? Besides adventurers, monsters can also be stolen, right? It can be. However, as long as I steal something from the monster, it will pull the hatred onto me, and I can't beat the monster alone, so I don't dare to steal the monster's things. Moonlight Bunny said with some bitterness. Originally I was planning on joining a team where I steal stuff and then have teammates to help me fight monsters. Unfortunately, since my natural skill isn't a combat type, no team wants me. Zhongzhe nodded, so that's how it is. An interesting idea suddenly arose in his mind, so he smiled and said, let's do an experiment in a while, you go steal the boss and see what you can steal. Don't worry, I'll help you fight the monsters. Oh. Okay. Moonlight Bunny hadn't really stolen anything from the boss because she didn't dare to, and now that she had Zhongzhe backing her up, she was emboldened. Somehow, she wouldn't doubt Zhongzhe's words at all. By the way, why did you go to the 30th floor of the demon domain? What's there? Zhongzhe asked another question that he was more concerned about. My dad, he just disappeared on the 30th floor, so I want to go look for him. Moonlight Bunny's voice was low, and his expression looked a little sad. Zhongzhe sighed in his heart. There was only one outcome for humans who disappeared in the magic domain, and that was to be killed by monsters or other adventurers, or else for a period of time, they would be forcibly kicked out of the magic domain. However, Zhongzhe did not say these things. He believed that Moonlight Bunny knew better than he did in his heart. Moonlight Bunny just did not want to believe that her father was not alive. Without seeing the body, it was not a death, this was this little girl's last hope. The two quickly arrived at the last room on the 4th floor, in which a squad was besieging the bull-headed commander, so Zhongzhe had to wait beside him with the Moonlight Bunny. Fortunately, that squad was too weak to be a match for the bullhead commander. After 10 minutes, they were forced to flee the battlefield. It's our turn. Zhongzhe turned his head to Moonlight Bunny and said, I'll pull the bullhead commander's hatred over first, then you take the opportunity to steal from him. Don't worry, I won't let him hurt you. Uh-huh. The Moonlight Bunny nodded. She inexplicably felt in her heart that Zhongzhe was very reliable and couldn't help but trust him. Brothers. On. Zhongzhe summoned all of his summoned monsters, and with a big wave of his hand, he surged towards the bull-headed commander. -145. Rakshasa. -270. Goblin King. -484. Butcher of Death. -311. Swallowing Frog. -218. Bullhead Commander. -166. Birdman. Chapter 54, Subprofessional Materials. Under Zhongzhe's command, the ox-headed commander was suppressed to the point where he could barely return the favor. Just as it was about to use the skill, charge, a spider web caught it in place, and then, Zhang Zai's Minotaur chieftain gave it a counter-charge. Directly knocking the bull-headed commander into a daze, the other summoned monsters gave it a pounding, and the bull-headed commander's blood level dropped rapidly at a rate visible to the naked eye. Moonlight Bunny! Go for it! Upon hearing Zhang Zai's shout, Moonlight Bunny, who had been watching the battle from the side, immediately rushed up, as she circled around behind the ox-headed commander and reached out to touch on it. You have gained one, hard bull horn. Moonlight Bunny froze for a moment. She had expected to touch a magic soul orb or an equipment or something like that, but she didn't expect to touch a strange piece of hard cow horn. What's this thing for? Moonlight Bunny was confused. Ow. The bull-headed commander suddenly turned around, its hatred instantly focusing on the Moonlight Bunny, as if being stolen by the Moonlight Bunny was a strange shame. Ouch. The Moonlight Bunny was scared and backed up a bit, but the bull-headed commander did not catch up with her as Zhang Zai ordered the poison spider to put another spider web on the bull-headed commander. Don't be afraid. Zhang Zai comforted the Moonlight Bunny, with me here, it can't touch you. The Moonlit Bunny settled down and thought for a moment, before she suddenly rushed back up and pawed at the bull-headed commander again. Ow. The bull-headed commander was once again furious, and if he could speak, I'm afraid he would have exploded on the spot. You're still fucking coming? Zhang Zai was also speechless beside him. This Moonlight Bunny had stolen once and was not overjoyed, but even stole again. Fortunately, the duration of the spiderweb on the bull-headed commander hadn't disappeared yet, so it could only roar angrily in place instead of being able to do anything to the Moonlight Bunny slippery. The Moonlight Bunny was getting bolder and bolder. She actually spat out her little tongue and made a face at the bullhead commander. Her appearance was playful and adorable. Big dumb cow. You can't touch me. Moonlight Bunny said with a grin, I'm going to steal everything from you. When she finished, she stepped forward and touched it again, but this time she didn't touch anything. Looks like you really don't have anything on you. Bye. The Moonlight Bunny bounced back to Zhang Zai and said to him as if inviting credit, Big Brother Rakshasa, guess what goodies I stole? Don't know. Zhang Zai shook his head as the Moonlight Bunny sent a trade request, and Zhang Zai saw grade C, hard cow horn, and a piece of grade D, cow hide, in the trade bar. This is material? Zhang Zai froze for a moment, somewhat incredulous. In the magic realm, the delineation of professions relied solely on the weapons used by the adventurers, and as for the other sub-professions, no one had even heard of them. Could it be that it is possible to learn side professions in the magic domain? However, there's no mention of it at all in the guide to the magic domain, and I haven't heard anyone around me say who has practiced a vice profession, but the appearance of these materials proves that a vice profession exists in the magic domain, so it's really strange. Zhang Zai thought for a moment and said to the Moonlight Bunny, let's leave these materials here with me for now. Moonlight Bunny nodded and clicked agree to trade. After that, Zhang Zai began to deal with the bull-headed commander wholeheartedly, and in about a few minutes, the bull-headed commander let out a miserable cry of grief and fell to the ground dead. Collected another boss, Zhang Zai looked at the two bull-head commanders in his summoning space, and his heart settled down a bit more. You should have gotten the key, right? Go wait for me on the 5th floor first, I have to go to the 3rd floor to fight the boss. Zhang Zai sent the Moonlight Bunny away and came back to the 3rd floor by himself, preparing to fight the Goblin King once more. This time, he was lucky that no adventurers had grabbed the Goblin King from him for the time being, and Zhang Zai made quick work of it, putting the Goblin King down in less than a few minutes and taking it under his wing. Now, he had 7 bosses. Even if he encountered a siege of adventurers, Zhang Zai would still have the power to fight. Okay. Return to the 5th level. Zhang Zai was full of confidence as he once again arrived at the 5th level of the demonic domain. The Moonlight Bunny was waiting for him. Meanwhile, those adventurers from before were also eyeing the spot, and they had decided to wait for the rabbit here when they expected Zhang Zai to come back. The Moonlight Bunny sensed that the atmosphere around him was not right and whispered to Zhang Zai, Big Brother Rakshasa, these people must have read the top bounty post, and they're going to turn against you. You have to be careful. Don't worry. They won't dare to have any crooked thoughts after a while. Zhang Zai's mouth contained a cold smile. He believed that as long as he pulled out his boss battle team, no one would be his opponent. Rakshasa. Suddenly, Lu Yueying's voice came from the side, and Zhang Zai turned his head to look, only to see Lu Yueying and the rest of the 3 men and 1 woman walking towards him. Ah! That thief! The one who let out a cry of alarm was the Grumpy Dragon King, who instantly let out an angry cry after seeing the Moonlight Bunny, and at the same time, he also saw Zhang Zai next to him, and his face turned odd. Brother! Why are you with this thief? Are you two really in cahoots? Things are different from what you think. Moonlight Bunny has changed her ways. She promises that she will never steal again. Zhang Zai was speechless with a shock in his heart. How did he meet this one-track-minded guy again? Humph. A dog can't change its ways. I don't believe she's changed her ways. The irascible Dragon King had a furious look on his face as he glared viciously at the Moonlight Bunny. Zhang Zai shook his head helplessly before passing a wink to Moonlight Bunny. Moonlight Bunny pursed her lips and gathered her courage to come before the Grumpy Dragon King, bowing and apologizing. I'm sorry. I won't steal anything next time, please forgive me. With that, Moonlight Bunny gave back what he had stolen from the Grumpy Dragon King. Zhang Zai couldn't see their transaction and didn't know what exactly it was, but seeing the Grumpy Dragon King's expression relax, it was clear that the item had been returned to its rightful owner. The irascible Dragon King bristled and said half-heartedly, "Humph. Good men don't fight with women, I'll forgive you this time." The giant god walked forward, shook Zhang Zai's hand and said with a smile, "Last time, I heard from Moon's shadow that you helped her lure the iron-toothed wolf away. You're very brave, I hope to become friends with you." One night Knowing Autumn also came up to greet Zhang Zai, and Little Princess of Money, with a flat expression beside her, lazily asked, "Get going, the boss will be snatched away again in a while." Lu Yueying looked towards Zhang Zai and invited him to join the team. Zhang Zai looked around and shook his head. "I'm already the prey of bounty hunters now, and a lot of people are hitting on me, so it's better if we don't team up, lest we get you guys involved as well." Aside from Lu Yueying, the remaining few people were stunned. Chapter 55, Fertile water doesn't flow into outsiders' fields. What? You're a bounty hunter now? How come I didn't know that? The Little Princess of Money's eyes burst out with golden light and greedily asked, "How much is your bounty?" "Fertilizer doesn't flow to outsiders, or else, let me earn this money." The irascible Dragon King said angrily, "Money, money, money. Do you even betray your friends for money? Cut. He's your friend, not mine." The Little Princess of Money rolled her eyes. "Money doesn't make a son of a bitch. Lately my old lady's hands are tight. His bounty should be enough to cover my living expenses for a month." "Didn't you just get $1.5 million in bounty a while ago? Spent it all again so quickly." The Grumpy Dragon King's eyes widened in some disbelief. The Little Princess of Money looked depressed and waved her hand. "Don't mention it. It was split in half by a kid named Zhang Zai. It caused my income and expenditure to be unbalanced this month. It really pisses me off." Hearing these words, Zhang Zai's pupils instantly shrunk, and he already knew who this Little Princess of Money was. Bounty hunter, Shen Mengdai. I really didn't expect the Little Princess of Money to be the bounty hunter, Shen Mengdai. Although Zhang Zai was surprised in his heart, he did not move on the surface. The adventurers who mixed in the magic realm were very careful to protect their privacy, because no one could guarantee that they would not make hatred with others, and if their identities were exposed and the other party found them in the real world, things would be troublesome, and they would even bring danger to themselves. Moreover, Zhang Zai did not want to have too many interactions with this Shen Mengdai, so he pretended to know nothing about it. "Little princess, this joke is appropriate. The Rakshasa brothers are, after all, Moon's shadow saviors, and are also friends with the Dragon King, so it's only right that we get along with each other." Hearing the words of the giant god, the Little Princess of Money then converged a few points, skimmed her mouth and said, "I know." The Grumpy Dragon King said to the giant god, "And one night Knowing Autumn, let me tell you. This kid Rakshasa's natural skill is old and awesome. He can summon monsters to help him fight monsters. And he can even summon bosses. Really? One Knight to Know was stunned. This was the first time he had heard of such a natural skill. He looked at Zhang Zhe and asked, "You can really summon a boss?" Zhang Zhe had no choice but to nod his head. There was no hiding this kind of thing, and we would all know about it when we fought monsters together in the future. The giant god's expression was also quite surprised as he asked, "Brother Rakshasa, what rank is this talent skill of yours?" "Honestly, I think this talent skill is very powerful. It should be at least S rank, right?" "It's a bit higher than S rank." Zhang Zhe could only say so much. He was afraid that telling everyone that his natural skill was SSS rank would scare these people away. Even though Zhang Zhe had made some reservations, he had still startled everyone present. "A little higher than S rank? That SSS. My goodness." The cranky Dragon King's eyes went wide as he kind of couldn't believe his ears. It was important to know that right now, there were no more than 500 S-rank gifted adventurers in the entire country of Daxia with recordable records. And the number of SS class is said to be no more than 5 fingers. Adventurers like Lu Yuing and the giant god who possessed S-rank talent were already extremely rare, and SS rank that was even more rare. A look of disbelief was also on the faces of One Knight's Knowledge and the giant god, as they were completely unable to connect this ordinary young man in front of them with an SS-class gifted adventurer. It was because Zhang Zhe was really ordinary except for his looks, which were a bit more handsome, and Sunny Lu Yuing had actually guessed in her mind that Zhang Zhe's natural skill was not simple, but she thought that Zhang Zhe's natural skill was at most the same as hers, i.e. S-ranked, but unexpectedly, it was SS-ranked. The eyes of the little princess of money looking at Zhang Zhe now had completely changed, no longer as contemptuous and disdainful as just now, but filled with endless admiration. SS grade. This means lots and lots of small money. The little princess's eyes had turned into symbols of money. In her mind, Zhang Zhe had just turned from an ordinary person into a money tree. Heh. I really didn't expect that a few of us would be lucky enough to meet an adventurer with an SS rank natural skill. The giant god laughed with an excited look on his face and said, "Brother Rakshasa's future is unlimited in the future. We'll have to take care of us when the time comes. The giant god is too kind. I'm still a newbie, so let's take care of each other in the future." Zhang Zhe responded humbly. In fact, he understood in his heart that although his talent skill level was higher than everyone, it did not indicate that he was necessarily better than everyone. While natural skills play a role in winning or losing a battle, they are not decisive. Because talent skills had a cooldown time and a spirit value consumption, it was impossible for an adventurer to use them continuously. In addition, the environment of the magic realm is very complex, with a wide variety of monsters and even harder to fight bosses. Therefore, an adventurer's combat skills and mind are sometimes more important than natural skills. If you can't utilize your natural skill wisely in battle, you're just storming the world and wasting an excellent natural skill. At the same time, one has to be wary of other adventurers who are behind the scenes. Therefore, fighting alone in the magic realm is not the wisest choice. Only by forming a team with other like-minded companions can you live longer and go farther in the magic realm. The giant god nodded approvingly. Zhang Zhe was not arrogant and unself-conscious like some adventurers with advanced talents, which made the giant god very appreciative. One night Knowing Autumn said from the side, "Since we all know each other, let's add each other as friends. I've never friended an adventurer with SS rank talent before, hee. It's enough for me to go back and brag to others for a few years." A friend application appeared in Zhang Zhe's field of vision, and Zhang Zhe clicked on all of them to agree, and now in his friend bar, he had 7 friends. Moonlight Bunny hadn't recovered from her shock yet, and she was in complete disbelief that she had inadvertently embraced a golden thigh. When she had sought Zhang Zhe's help before, it was only because she felt that Zhang Zhe was a good-hearted person who was nice to talk to, and she didn't think much of anything else. However, he did not expect that Zhang Zhe was not an ordinary adventurer, but was actually an SS-class adventurer. She could not help but feel excited in her heart, feeling that with Zhang Zhe's help, her wish to travel to the third level of the demon realm would be more easily realized. Grumpy Dragon King pulled Zhongzhe into the group, and Zhongzhe said, "Pull Moonlight Bunny in as well. I promised her to take her to the 30th floor to find her father. She cannot want any loot, as long as she can clear the level. Personally, I'm fine with it. I wonder if the others have an opinion?" The Grumpy Dragon King asked the others for their opinions. Lu Yuan didn't say anything and considered it a default. The Giant God and One Night Knowledge nodded their heads in agreement. Bringing someone along had no effect on them anyway, and it was even more inconsequential since Zhongzhe had also said that the Moonlight Bunny would not share any of the loot. Chapter 56, A First-Class Team. You all be the good old boys. Then I'll be the villain. The little Princess of Money crossed her arms and said, "The labor fee should be more or less meaningful, right? After all, we're the ones charging ahead, while this Moonlight Bunny is sitting back and enjoying herself. It's a bit unreasonable, isn't it?" The Grumpy Dragon King glared at the little Princess of Money. "There you go again. What else do you know besides money?" One Night Knowing Autumn also said, "Little Princess, let's waive the labor fee. A few of us are going to fight the boss anyway, so let's give her a ride." "Humph. You're all rich, with mines at home. I'm the only one who's poor and evil." "All right," the little princess said with an angry grunt. "When you fight the monsters in a while, don't even ask me to help you guys get your blood back. Go pour your own blood replenishing medicine." All right. Everyone stop arguing, I'll pay for the Moonlight Bunny's labor." The Giant God came out to round up the situation again as he smilingly initiated a trade request to the little Princess of Money, who glared at him without any good reason and then refused the trade. "Today, for the sake of the captain, I don't want any money. However, don't think I'll give the Moonlight Bunny back its blood." The little Princess of Money turned around and said with an angry grunt. Grumpy Dragon King whispered to Zhongzhe, "Little Princess of Money is the only nurse in our team. Although she's a person who sees money, her character is still good, and her techniques are very good, but she's just too bad-tempered. Brother Rakshasa, don't get on her bad side." Zhongzhe nodded his head with a bitter smile. The nature of the little Princess of Money he had already seen in reality, that was really unscrupulous for the sake of money. "Everyone get ready. This time we must defeat the 5th level boss Blackfin Wizard." The Giant God spoke to the crowd after we failed last time. I summarized that the reason lies in the fact that the Blackfin sorcerer's skill was too powerful and we failed because we didn't do enough preparations at that time. This time everyone should have brought enough blood replenishing pills, plus the green blessing from the little Princess of Money to give everyone back their blood, as well as the joining of the Zhongzhe brothers. I believe that this time, we can definitely succeed. The crowd nodded their heads. This 5th layer boss Blackfin Wizard was not a star stronger than the first 4 layers of the Magic Domain's boss. It could even be said that from the 5th level onwards, the difficulty of the Demon Domain was going to be raised by a big step. Not only were the monsters on each level tougher, but the skills of the bosses were also several times more powerful than the bosses on the previous levels. It was also from the 5th floor that the requirements for adventurers became higher. Meanwhile, solo adventurers will have an increasingly difficult time, and only teamwork will make it easier and safer to clear the level. If everyone has no problems, let's get going. Afterward, the Giant God led the crowd out of the altar, and Zhongzhe walked in the group, and the surrounding adventurers who were eyeing him intently, seeing Zhongzhe joining the group, one by one, also temporarily dismissed the idea of sneaking up on him. After all, killing people in the magic realm was also condemned and punished, and although this was a place outside the law and it would be hard for the police to find the murderer, if there were too many witnesses, their magic realm name would also be on the Magic Realm Authority's most wanted list. If the crime was particularly serious and the killings were particularly numerous, the Magic Domain Authority would also put their names up in the bounty area. At that time, they would also face the risk of being hunted by other adventurers. That's why it's better to do things like kill people quietly. Walk from the altar to the beach, and you can encounter many monsters along the way. These monsters are divided into 2 types, a white fishman with a fishbone javelin named Surfer. Upon encountering an adventurer, these surfers will throw their javelins at the adventurer for considerable damage. But that's not the most deadly. These surfers often appear in groups, so they also act in unison when attacking their targets, throwing javelins together. There were often adventurers who were stabbed by 4 or 5 javelins at the same time, resulting in serious injuries or even instant death. At this time, a defensive warrior with a shield is more desirable. His shield can withstand these javelin attacks and protect his companions behind him, and it takes at least a minute for a new fishbone javelin to appear in the hands of those surfers after they've cast it, and in that time, they're barehanded and easy to kill. The second monster is a yellow fishman in robes that casts restorative spells, named the Tide Caller. These Tide Callers often follow a bunch of surfers and restore blood to those surfers. Although it didn't recover much blood, its recovery spell was a group recovery. This greatly increased the surfers' chances of survival, buying enough time for them to regain their new javelins to attack the enemy. Therefore, when encountering these fishmen monsters, the adventurers usually grabbed these Tide Callers and killed them before turning their heads to deal with the surfers. The Giant God and others did the same thing. The Giant God was a shield-armored warrior, and his main hand weapon was a thick shield tower that was 3 meters tall and 1 meter 8 wide. So as long as he hid behind his shield tower, he could basically defend himself against 90% of all attacks. Not only that, but the Giant God's natural skills are powerful. Zhang Zhe had heard the Grumpy Dragon King say that the Giant God's natural skill was the S-ranked Defense Aura. Defense Aura, S. Grade, 1. Experience, 857/1000. Consumption, 10 points of vitality. Cooldown, 60 seconds. Effect. Increases the defense of all team members by 50% within 3 meters, with no time limit. Remarks. Level 1 Defense Aura increases the defense of all team members by 60%. Level 2 Defense Aura increases the defense of all team members by 70%. Level 3 Defense Aura increases the defense of all team members by 80%. Level 4 Defense Aura increases the defense of all team members by 90%. Level 5 Defense Aura increases the defense of all team members by 100%. As long as teammates were within 3 meters of the Giant God, their defense would be boosted significantly, which would ensure a greater chance of survival for the team members. After the surfers threw the first wave of javelins, one night knowing Autumn would use his skill, Icy Wind and Rain, to freeze all of these surfers in place for 30 seconds. Taking advantage of this time, the irascible Dragon King and Lu Yuing would rush out from the shield tower of the Giant God and directly kill the enemy's line and go on a killing spree. Both of their attacks were melee explosive, with high damage values and fast attack speeds, which could be useful for quickly wiping out a target. Even if the two of them were injured in the battle, there was no need to worry. The little Princess of Money in the back had been keeping an eye on the two of them's blood levels. As long as she found that the first signs of trouble were not right, she would cast Green Blessing in time to give them back their blood to ensure that their lives were safe. This was a mature team. The players trusted each other and cooperated well. In Zhang Zhe's opinion, such a team was definitely a first-class team. Chapter 57, The Blessing of the Water God. It seems like I'm lucky to be able to join a team like this, which has a lot of benefits for me. I won't have to fight alone in the future. Zhang Zhe thought in his heart. Although Zhang Zhe had the highest talent skill level in the group, he was after all an adventurer rated as a novice. Therefore, the Giant God did not allow Zhang Zhe to charge into battle, but instead allowed him to stay with the Moonlight Bunny, the little Princess of Money, and the one-night Jiqiu as a backup force in case of an unforeseen situation. Zhang Zhe didn't have a problem with this, and since he didn't need to do anything, he was happy to be idle. The only thing he regretted was that he didn't have the opportunity to kill the monsters, and he couldn't be adding members to his summoning team. In this way, the group finally killed the beach on the seashore. Here, there stood a huge stone, on which were carved some weird patterns, which seemed to breathe, flickering on and off with a rhythm, looking very bizarre. Let's all go and touch the stones, and after we get the blessing of the Water God, we'll go down to the sea together. The Giant God said to the crowd. The blessing of the Water God? What is that? With doubts, Zhangzhe followed the crowd to the boulder, only to see that after everyone touched the boulder, their bodies emitted a faint blue glow, as if they had gained some sort of buff enhancement. Zhangzhe also placed his hand on the stone, and then he saw a line of prompts appear before his eyes. You have gained the blessing of the water god for 60 minutes. Blessing of the water god. Grade 1. Effect. Within 1 hour, no breathing is required to walk underwater. This buff is obviously used to help adventurers fight underwater for long periods of time. Zhangzhe looked across the sea and thought in his heart, it seems that the next battles are all going to take place in the sea. The boss of the 5th floor is at the bottom of the sea, and if we want to fight it, we have to go to the sea. That's why this sea god's blessing is a must-get. Lu Yueying stood next to Zhangzhe and opened her mouth to explain to him the duration of the buff is 1 hour, which requires us to clear the level within an hour or return to the shore in time. Otherwise, we will be in a drowning state and will lose 10% of our blood every minute. The giant god also turned his head and spoke. We failed the first few times we fought the 5th floor's boss. There are many reasons in there, but it all boils down to the fact that the 5th floor's boss is too difficult to fight. The giant god sighed helplessly, I hope we can pass this time. Zhangzhe had read the magic domain guide before, and he remembered that the boss Blackfin Wizard on the 5th floor was a spell-based monster, and the guide didn't describe its attacks in too much detail. Maybe it was also because the number of adventurers who could beat the 5th floor wasn't too many, plus, the method of defeating this kind of difficult boss involved the interests of many people. For example, some adventurers relied on the sale of strategies to beat the boss, or to make money by taking newbies through the level for a living, so they were easily reluctant to spread the word out, and naturally, the guidebook didn't do too much with the information to be able to make this first rate team with 2 S-ranked talent skills and 3 A-ranked talent skills stranded. It seems that this Blackfin sorcerer is really difficult to deal with as well. Zhangzhe looked at his team of summoned monsters, I must take down this Blackfin sorcerer. Seeing that all of them had already all obtained the blessing of the sea god, the giant god led the way towards the sea water. There were also many adventurers around, either walking towards the sea water or coming out of it. Zhangzhe noticed that many of the adventurers nodded their heads slightly in greeting gestures when they saw the group of the giant god and the others, and it was clear that many of them recognized them. It was normal to think about it, adventurers with S-rank skill talent were only a few hundred in the entire magic realm, and a team with 2 S-rank adventurers at the same time was probably just the giant god, so naturally, it would leave a deep impression on people. I just don't know how surprised these adventurers would be to learn that they have an even more awesome SS-ranked gifted player in their team. The feeling of heading into the depths against the sea is not for everyone. Especially those who are afraid of water, watching themselves being swallowed up by seawater little by little, their hearts will surely be under tremendous pressure. This was the case with the little princess of money on the side, only to see her face pale, her hands gripping the scepter in her hand tightly, her body could not help trembling, and when her nose and mouth were about to be lost in the sea water, she closed her eyes at once, and put on an appearance of looking at death. Yes, this little girl is especially afraid of water. The grumpy Dragon King laughed loudly, Little princess, you haven't cured this hydrophobia yet? I heard that in the future, there are several more layers of the magic realm where monsters are fought in the water. What are you going to do? The little princess of money, who was already completely soaked in water, didn't dare to say anything, but in her heart, she cursed the grumpy Dragon King 1,000 times. The giant god at the side shook his head and said, Dragon King, it's not like you don't know that the little princess has experience with drowning, so don't mock her. Got it. The Dragon King smiled and shrugged his shoulders, turning his head to Zhangzhe. This time, you know that stinky girl's weakness. If she dares to bully you again, you'll hit her back with this thing about her being afraid of water. Zhangzhe had a bitter smile on his face. The group walked along the seabed towards the depths of the sea. Under the blessing of the sea god, the sea water would not have any effect on them and they were as free to move as if they were on land. The little princess was finally in a better state. She regained her essence and began to fight with the grumpy Dragon King. It was quite interesting for the crowd to listen to this pair of rivals bickering there while advancing towards the bottom of the sea. Soon, the crowd saw an abandoned undersea temple appear ahead, and Lu Yueying told Zhang Zhe that it was the location of the 5th-level boss, the Blackfin Wizard. The crowd arrived at the entrance of the temple, just as they came across a group of adventurers exiting the temple, and the two sides fought Elder Brother Giant God. "You guys came to fight the boss too?" Among the adventurers on the opposite side, the leader, a short adventurer with a flowing beard, waved his hand in greeting to the Giant God. The Giant God also nodded at the bearded man. "Brother Blackly Kuei, what are you guys?" Blackly Kuei sighed and said glumly, "Failed again. Damn, this Blackfin sorcerer is too hard to fight. We fought to the 3rd stage and were directly bloodied by 2 waves of sacrifices, and if we don't run away, the group will be extinguished." The Giant God frowned and said with deep approval, "Yes, this Blackfin wizard's 3rd stage skills are too perverse. We were also defeated in the 3rd stage last time. So what are you going to do? Do we have to fight again?" "We definitely have to fight, but we don't plan on wasting time and are going to spend money to hire an expert to bring it." Blackly Kuei said helplessly, "Although hiring an expert will cost a few $1,000,000, it's better than wasting time by staying stuck at this level." Chapter 58, The Blackfin Wizard. "Well, also right." The Giant God nodded approvingly. "I heard that the number of magic cave monsters outside has been increasing lately, and the country is urgently recruiting more strong magic realm people to defend the country. We ordinary people don't dare to say that we can make much contribution to the country, but we also need to have the ability to protect ourselves and our families before we can do so. What you said, old brother Giant God, is very true, so we have decided to fight quickly." Blackly Kuei said, "In a moment, we'll go back to the shore and hire people, so we'll try to make sure we get through today." Because the time for the water god's blessing was almost up, Blackly Kuei didn't chat too much with the Giant God and left in a hurry with his companions. The Giant God's face was grave. Blackly Kuei is also an S-rank talented adventurer, and his team isn't a dry one, but as a result, he's been stuck here at Blackfin Sorcerer for almost a month. "This boss is really hard to deal with. We've also been stuck for 2 weeks, or else, let's ask an expert to bring it." The one Knight Jicho on the side opened his mouth and said, "No way." The little Princess of Money immediately raised her objection as she beamed, "Hiring someone would cost millions. And we can't take any of the good stuff that the boss popped out. This deal is too much of a loss. I'm firmly against it." The grumpy Dragon King squinted at the little Princess of Money and said with a grunt, "Then are you sure that you can stabilize all of us when the Blackfin Sorcerer uses death sacrifice?" "Cut. My green blessing is a single skill, how can I stabilize everyone's blood?" The little Princess of Money huffed and puffed. "That's not the end of it." The grumpy Dragon King rolled his eyes. "Just don't raise any objections and honestly listen to the boss's arrangement." The little Princess of Money wanted to retort, but the grumpy Dragon King was telling the truth. Although her auxiliary skill, Green Blessing, was useful in returning blood, it was only for a single body, and once there were multiple targets that all needed to be returned, she would be too busy to take care of them. In fact, in response to this situation, there had been a discussion in the group about whether or not to absorb another auxiliary gifted adventurer into the group. However, encounters with perverted bosses like the Blackfin Wizard were rare after all, and it was a bit of a waste for the party to keep 2 nurse adventurers. Because adventurers with supportive natural skills have little to no offensive power in the party, but also share in the rewards that come after fighting monsters. So after all the math, the idea was eventually dropped. "Let's make another attempt today, and if we still fail, I'll consider hiring an expert to take us through," the Giant God said to the crowd after thinking about it. "Let's hope that we can pass in one fell swoop this time." One Night Knowing Autumn sighed slightly. In fact, he didn't have a bottom at all in his heart. Zhang Zhe asked in a low voice to Lu Yueying next to him, "Is there anything special about this Blackfin Wizard? I didn't find any relevant information on the Magic Domain Guide, so please tell me about it." "Okay." Lu Yueying nodded and patiently explained, "This Blackfin Wizard can be divided into 3 stages during combat. In the first phase, the Blackfin Wizard doesn't go down, it summons minions to guard itself, and after about 3 waves of minions, if it still hasn't wiped out the adventurers, it goes down and enters the second phase. Stage 2 Blackfin Wizards will use an attack called Dark Heavy Strike that deals a lot of damage to the target and also produces a knockout effect. If the second stage still hasn't wiped out us adventurers, or if the Blackfin Sorcerer's blood level drops below half, it will enter the third stage, which is also the toughest to fight. The Blackfin Sorcerer will use the group attack skill, Death Sacrifice. This is done by summoning small monsters to its side, and by sacrificing them, while dealing group damage to all hostile targets. Lu Yuying's face was grave as she said, this group attack has extremely high damage, and it also comes with a stacking effect. The first Death Sacrifice will deal 20% damage, and each subsequent Death Sacrifice will increase the damage by 20%, eventually reaching 100%, and we're all dead. I see. Zhang had a plan in his heart after hearing this. He now finally understood why the Grumpy Dragon King had just taken the Money Little Princess's single recovery skill. It turned out that it was because of the Death Sacrifice's group attack effect, which dealt a large amount of damage to all the members of the team, and the fact that the Little Princess of Money simply can't be guaranteed to blood all of the players at the same time is probably a big reason for the failed pass. The first two stages are not much of a problem, we've already fought them 3 times, everyone is familiar with them. The most difficult thing is still the last stage. The giant god said to the crowd. I've summarized the lessons learned from the previous few failures, and I think that we'll change our tactics this time during the third stage. Separate 2 people to specifically guard the locations where those gargoyles appear, and as soon as the Blackfin Sorcerer summons the gargoyles for sacrifice, we'll kill those gargoyles as fast as we can, and maybe we'll be able to stop its death sacrifice. Well, I think this solution is feasible. One Knight to Know nodded in agreement. Without the little monsters, the Blackfin Sorcerer won't be able to make a death sacrifice, and we'll be able to defeat it. Good. That's the way to do it. So who's going to guard the little monsters? The Grumpy Dragon King asked the giant god. The giant god's gaze swept over the crowd and spoke. Firstly, rule out the Little Princess of Money. Her offensive and defensive abilities are too weak, and she also needs to restore everyone's blood, so she can't go and collect small monsters. Secondly, I can't go either. I have to hold off the Blackfin Wizard's attacks and protect the Little Princess of Money and the Moon Shadow Bunny. Neither can One Knight Knowledge. I still need his freeze spell skill to control the field. Then the only people left are the Dragon King, Moon Shadow, and Rakshasa. The Dragon King of Bursting Photographs raised his hand and said, just let Brother Rakshasa and I go. Moon Shadow has the highest attack out of all of us, so letting her deal with the boss is just right. The Rakshasa brothers and I will guard the small monsters and promise not to cause any trouble. With that, the Grumpy Dragon King patted Zhang Zai's shoulder and said smilingly, no problem, right, Brother Rakshasa? No problem. Zhang Zai had to agree. Well then, it's settled. After entering inside, everyone will listen to my command in unison. Don't mess up, play steadily and surely, we'll surely be able to pass the level. The giant god encouraged the crowd, and then everyone entered within the divine hall. This temple was in a state of disrepair, the roof of the temple was long gone, and there were ruins all around. In the center of the hall, there was a round stone platform. A black fishman that was bigger than the other fishmen was standing in the center of the altar. His hands were raised above his head, his mouth was reciting obscure incantations, and a mass of black gas was overflowing from its body. The scene looked very evil and bizarre. Chapter 59, Entering the Third Phase. That would be the Blackfin Wizard. Zhang Zai narrowed his eyes. The giant god glanced at the crowd, and when he saw that everyone was ready to fight, he took the lead and charged up. Quack quack quack. The Blackfin Sorcerer spotted the intruder, who seemed to still be in the midst of justice, so his body couldn't move, and let out a strangled cry, summoning his subordinates. In an instant, a large number of fishmen poured out from the left and right exits. There were different types, and they surrounded towards the giant god and the others like a tidal wave. Everyone come behind me. Jiqiu, Ice Wind and Rain Control. The giant god shouted as he set up his shield. The crowd immediately shrank behind his shield, and One Knight Knowledge waved his staff, and a large ice-sharp sword fell from the sky, freezing the dozen or so fishmen that had just rushed in front of them in place. A dozen more fishmen rushed up behind them, and they were greeted by the grumpy Dragon King and Lu Yuing, who rushed out from behind their shields. Zhang Zhe also recruited his summoned monsters, but without receiving a command from the giant god, he stayed pressed. The Dragon King and Lu Yuing rushed sound left and right among the fishmen, killing most of the fishmen on the opposite side. Especially Lu Yuing, the light slash was unleashed, and it was almost a one-trick pony. The little princess of money hunkered down behind her shield, keeping a close eye on the duo's blood levels, swinging her staff every now and then to rain green blessing down on the needy's head. Soon, the wave of small monsters was cleared. Quack quack quack. The Blackfin Wizard's monstrous cry rang out again, and a second wave of mini-monsters followed. In this way, the crowd followed the previous method of fighting and consecutively attacked 3 waves of small monsters, allowing the battle to enter the third stage. Blackfin Wizard, down the road. Attention everyone! The Blackfin Sorcerer is coming down. The giant god immediately reminded the crowd, and everyone perked up and prepared to fight the Blackfin Sorcerer. Quack quack quack. The Blackfin Sorcerer's feet were off the ground, just floating forward, although his speed was not fast, but occasionally he would use a skill similar to Flash, instantly appearing beside a certain target, and then, slapping up. -459. Blackfin Wizard. The hit target is instantly knocked away. A large amount of damage value is generated at the same time. Zhang Zhe then saw with his own eyes that the irascible Dragon King was slapped a dozen meters away by the Blackfin Wizard. It directly crashed into the walls of the surrounding shrine. Green blessing. The little princess of money immediately shook her staff to return blood to the grumpy Dragon King on the other side. One night Jiqiu and Lu Yuing acted at the same time. First was one night knowing autumn's ice, wind and rain, the Blackfin Sorcerer was instantly frozen in place. Lu Yeye rushed up from the side, a set of normal combos, coupled with light chop, taking away about 10% of the Blackfin Sorcerer's blood. This damage value is not low enough. It was important to know that the Blackfin Sorcerer was the boss of the 5th floor, although he was a sorcerer-type monster and did not have a high defense, he had a very thick blood volume, and Zhang Zhe guessed that this guy's blood volume might be second only to the giant god. The direction of development of the giant god was a tank with high defense and thick blood, so he preferred physique in his attribute values. The giant god himself said that when in danger people could draw the monsters towards him, and he went up to the top as he was about to pass 10,000 blood. Damn it! Every time this Blackfin Wizard strikes, the first one to hit is definitely me. The irascible Dragon King said with an annoyed face, "What the hell is this for?" The little princess of money giggled beside her and said, "Because you look the most beat up." The irascible Dragon King glared at her fiercely, turned and rushed at the Blackfin Wizard, swinging his club and taking out all his anger on him. Zhang Ze's side also sent his summoned monsters forward to fight, and the Death Butcher and Goblin King as well as the Minotaur Commander surrounded the Blackfin Sorcerer, and one by one, damage values floated up from the Blackfin Sorcerer's body. Although it wasn't as high as Lu Yeye and the Dragon King's damage, it was still considerable, and coupled with Zhang Ze's long-range bow and arrow attacks, the Blackfin Wizard's damage value was knocked down by another 10% or so. The giant god used his shield to protect the little princess of money, Moonlight Bunny, and one night to know autumn behind him, as he shouted to Zhang Ze and the others who were fighting, "Everyone must keep an eye on the Blackfin Sorcerer's blood level, and when half of it is left, immediately distance yourself from him. This guy will become even more frantic before he enters the third stage." Got it. The grumpy Dragon King responded, the stick in his hand still not stopping, and a skill hit the Blackfin Wizard, directly knocking him back. The Blackfin Sorcerer could detect the strength and weakness of his opponents, so he used the tactic of killing the weaker targets first and turning his head to deal with the stronger ones, so that he could avoid being surrounded by too many targets. As a result, Zhang Ze's summoned monsters became the Blackfin Wizard's main target of attack. -557. Blackfin Wizard. Every time the Blackfin Sorcerer flashed, he would appear next to Zhang Ze's summoned monsters, and every time he made a dark heavy strike, he would take away the life of a summoned monster except for bosses like the Death Butcher and the Minotaur Lord who were more resistant. None of the rest of the small monsters were spared, and all of them were taken out by the Blackfin sorcerer. Although Zhangze was heartbroken, he could only grit his teeth at the moment. Finally, the crowd suffered until the Blackfin wizard had only half of his blood left, and Lu Yueying shouted, "Everyone retreat." The grumpy Dragon King and Zhangze immediately retreated like the side of the giant god, who put up his shield to receive them, trying to protect them from the Blackfin sorcerer's attack. However, the Blackfin wizard's speed steeply accelerated, and all of a sudden, he instantly came to Lu Yue's side from a dozen meters away. A dark heavy blow hit her. It sent her flying. Ah! Lu Yueying let out a cry of shock, and her body flew straight out, and at this moment, not far behind her was Zhangze. Zhangze only saw a black shadow flying towards him, and he subconsciously reached out to catch it, resulting in a soft flesh crashing into his arms. Seeing that Lu Yueying crashed into his arms, Zhangze kindly asked, "Are you alright?" "No, it's fine." Lu Yueying lowered her head and immediately left Zhangze's embrace, before pulling him behind the giant god's shield. Quack quack quack. The Blackfin sorcerer flashed in front of the giant god and slapped the god's shield with a series of 3 dark heavy blows. The giant god only felt that his arms were going numb from the shock. At the same time a damage value floated up, and it was fortunate that this shield of his was an S-ranked equipment that helped him withstand a large portion of the attack damage. The Blackfin sorcerer is going to enter the 3rd stage. Everyone get into their own state according to the previously discussed fighting style. The giant god watched as the Blackfin sorcerer pushed over to the stone platform and said in a deep voice to his companions behind him, "Brother Rakshasa, let's go." The grumpy Dragon King jumped out from behind the giant god's shield and ran towards that monster exit on the right. Chapter 60, Death Sacrifice. Zhangze led the last 3 remaining summoned monsters to rush towards the monster exit on the left. My summoned monster team still has Death Butcher, Heaven Swallowing Frog and a bull-headed commander left. I hope I can hold out. Zhangze was a little worried in his heart. With only 3 of the 10 summoned monsters left, combat attrition was serious. If the monsters came out of the exit one by one, Zhangze could still hold his own. But if these monsters came out one by one, Zhangze was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it. "Brother Rakshasa, you don't have to be psychologically burdened." The shout of the giant god came from behind. "It doesn't matter even if 1 or 2 small monsters are released over occasionally. Those of us who can't just stand by and watch will find a way to get rid of it. You just need to block as many monsters as possible." Zhangze nodded, understood. The Dragon King on the other side yelled after hearing the giant god's words, "If there's a leak on my side as well, you guys can help me get rid of it as well." The little Princess of Money said in a bad mood, "What are you following to make a fuss? Rakshasa is a novice adventurer, you are all mature adventurers, how can you compare yourself to others? How shameless. Stinky girl. You're the one who talks too much." The grumpy Dragon King swung his fist at the little Princess of Money and yelled angrily, "All right. Phase 3 is here, everyone stand by." Hearing the giant god's order, the crowd turned their attention to the Blackfin sorcerer, only to see him slowly float up from the circular stone platform while chanting an obscure incantation, and the light around him suddenly dimmed. "Out!" The irascible Dragon King shouted, while swinging the iron rod in his hand, directly smashing it on the head of a surfer that had just rushed out from the exit. -503. Giant God. Surfer was blindsided by the cranky Dragon King's stick and spun in place to fall to the ground with a thud. The grumpy Dragon King clubbed the surfer in a flurry of blows, and instantly disposed of him. Immediately afterward, another Tidewaker rushed out from behind, and was again beaten to death with the baton. Zhangze's side also began to come out of the monsters. The first one to come out was the Tidewaker. Zhangze and the 3 bosses teamed up to exterminate this guy, and the back began to keep going out of the fissures. The types varied, but fortunately they all came out one by one, and Zhangze was able to hold his own. On the other side, the Blackfin wizard was hanging in midair, Still casting spells, the giant god and Lu Yuang and the others were melee attacks that couldn't hurt him, so one night knowing Autumn and the little princess of money, who could use long-range attacks, became the main attackers. However, the damage of the two of them was too low. One night knowing's ice pick could barely deal triple-digit damage, and little princess money's nimble ball was even lower, only out of the double digits. Luckily, later on, after the Blackfin sorcerer finished casting his spells, he slowly landed from the air to the ground, and was knocked down by 10% of his blood by a flurry of operations by Lu Yuan. Quack quack quack. The Blackfinned wizard yelled angrily when he saw that none of the Fishman minions had come to him. Dragon King, Rakshasa brothers. You guys be careful, I guess the Fishman army is coming. The giant god sent a reminder towards Zhang Zhe and the grumpy Dragon King. Sure enough, as soon as his words fell, he saw the number of fishmen that had originally popped up one by one suddenly surge up. Not only are the monsters coming out faster and faster, but there are also instances where 2 to 3 fishers come out at the same time. For a while, the irascible Dragon King and Zhang Zhe were a bit frazzled. Zhang Zhe's side was a little better. After all, he had just killed several fishmen and had already filled his team. Now that he encountered more fishmen, he immediately summoned all the summoned monsters in his team to work in concert, and was able to intercept a large portion of them, and the occasional 1 or 2 that slipped through the net were intercepted and eliminated by the giant gods and Lu Yuan's side. But the situation on the grumpy Dragon King's side wasn't so good, although he had a high attack, but after all, he was only one person. Stopping 2 or 3 fishmen at the same time was already his limit. The rest he could no longer do anything about. The result was that 5 or 6 fishmen broke through the Tyrannosaurus Rex King's defenses and made their way to the Blackfin wizard. Quack quack quack. The Blackfin sorcerer let out a sinister sneer, and then pressed one palm on the top of a surfer's head, and between flashes of black light, that surfer's entire body instantly became paralyzed, as if it had been drained of blood. Death sacrifice unleashed. -815. Blackfin wizard. At once, a black skull pattern appeared above everyone's head. Zhang Zhe looked at his attributes, and there was an additional status on it. Death Curse, Level 1. Grade 1. Effect, Cursed by Blackfin Wizard, spell damage stacks by 20%. Crap. This status is too ruthless. Zhang Zhe's eyes widened. No wonder the giant god and the others failed one after another before. This Blackfin wizard's death sacrifice skill was indeed very powerful. Jiqiu. Quickly freeze all the rest of the fishmen that missed the net. Moon Shadow, get rid of these fishmen as fast as you can. The giant god commanded loudly. Never give the Blackfin sorcerer another chance to unleash the death sacrifice. The crowd was in awe and acted immediately. Damn fishmen. Death to all of them. The irascible Dragon King wielded his iron rod playfully, concentrating as many fishmen as he could to keep them from running toward the Blackfin wizard. The ice, wind and rain of one night knowledge was almost unbroken, and whenever there were any leaky fishmen close to the Blackfin sorcerer, he tried to stop these guys midway as much as possible. Lu Yuang also didn't have the chance to attack the Blackfin sorcerer again right now. She could only do her best to eliminate the fishmen that had missed the net right now, and she absolutely couldn't let any more of them get close to the Blackfin sorcerer. This is no way to go on. Zhang Zhe, who was leading the summoned monsters to fight off the fishmen, took the time to look behind him and frowned. Everyone is now exhausted from trying to block the fishman minions. There is no room to fight the Blackfin wizard. So much, the time of the water god's blessing is about to expire. The giant god had also noticed this situation, but he couldn't find a better solution to this problem for a while now. Alas. It seems that this one has failed again, and if we really can't do it, then we really need to ask an expert to take us. The giant god shook his head helplessly. Just then, when the Blackfin sorcerer saw that no fishman minions were approaching him, he suddenly changed his routine and actually took the initiative to lean towards those fishman minions himself. What the hell? Why is the Blackfin wizard moving on his own? By all rights, he should have stayed put and waited for the little monsters to pass. The crowd was stunned, so that their previously set tactical play would be completely ineffective. The giant god reacted quite quickly and shouted, "It's useless to block the small monsters now. Everyone come back right away and focus all your efforts to see if you can finish off the Blackfin Wizard. If it still doesn't work, we'll have to retreat. We definitely can't take any chances."